Eli, welcome to AXRP.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so today we're going to be talking about AI 2027. This this big thing you guys put out. But I guess the first thing I want to ask is what is AI 2027? Like, what are you trying to do with it?
Yeah, good question. So I think our motivation was basically like we don't think there's uh kind of like good scenarios out there that really try to play all the way through what happens with AI in a way that feels plausible to us.
Hmm.
And in particular, there's a lot of people who talk about like, there could be, X could happen, Y could happen. There'll be some sort of like, AI takeover, but like there's not really like gaming out on like what that would actually look like.
Hmm.
And so our motivation was basically just like, you know, we want to fill that like niche of like we think we thought there was like not much out there in this area, and we think it's very important. Putting a concrete scenario out there, it helps, kind of like give a place to start with, so other people can be like, oh, I think that would happen or that wouldn't happen, and build off of it. And for the people who also agree with it, it helps prioritize kind of work. And then I think also a great thing about the scenarios are they're a good medium for communicating to a wide audience. So I think, we were hoping, and I think what ended up happening a good amount with AI 2027 is that lots of people read it and it feels more like kind of pressing or real if it's a scenario as opposed to kind of like an abstract argument. It's also more compelling to like read all the way through. And so, yeah, I guess those are the kind of types of things we had in mind. But yeah, I think on a basic high level, it was kind of just like, we think this is like a niche that should be filled. It's kind of crazy that no one else has done this. We want to actually make like a scenario that we believe is like realistic for kind of AGI and superintelligence.
Yeah, so you want this concrete scenario. Is this like should readers think of this as being a thing that at the time you wrote it, like should people read this as a thing that your team found plausible, a thing that your team found most likely, like the median outcome, and along which dimensions do you think this is plausible, or yeah, can you tell us like what in what ways and what parts of the story do you think are like plausible or likely or most likely?
Yeah. So I think the like short way to basically describe it would be like we want it to be as plausible as possible while containing the level of detail that we had.
Hmm.
So like there's this trade-off, right, where if you say things in kind of like a vague way or you don't really take stances, like
Yeah.
things are more likely to be true, but also like it's valuable to game things out in detail and provide like specific hypotheses, even if like a particular one is unlikely. Um, so I mean, various examples. So the kind of like overall timeline of the scenario was similar to the lead author Daniel Cocatello's median when we first started writing. His median has slipped somewhat further back by the time we published. But it was still kind of like basically all the team members saw it as like one of the most likely years, or kind of like close to the modal year. That kind of like this AI takeoff, from sort of like, basically automating all human work would happen. Um, yeah, but then like thinking about different like other concrete things, it's a bit hard to define precisely, I think, because we're kind of optimizing. Like if like it might be a bit degenerate if you like just listed down like the most likely thing at like each point, and you might end up in a situation where like the world like there's not enough crazy thing happening, basically, like if
Yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
makes sense. Like it's like there's like if you think there's like a 3% chance each month that some super crazy thing happens or whatever,
Yeah.
but like each month you just like say like that it doesn't happen because it's like most likely not gonna happen, then you end up in a situation where you're like you have too little like super crazy things. So
Right,
it kind
right.
of like depends what like abstraction you like think at. We didn't really think like we didn't game this out in like a lot of detail, the exact thing we were optimizing for, but yeah, I think it's something like trying to like go as detailed as we can while keeping it plausible, and also trying to somewhat avoid this failure mode of like just like having it be too normal and not enough crazy events happen. Though I think maybe we like didn't do like I think probably we didn't do go enough in that direction to the extent we like wanted to like maybe we should have sampled more like crazy things happening. Although of course then like a downside of that is that it gives more ammo for like critics to be like, oh, you included this thing that was super crazy, and like probably not that exact thing is like very unlikely to happen.
Okay. So so it sounds like basically, am I right to think that the ways in which this scenario you think is realistic is you think that like some trajectory roughly like this, or like this shape of trajectory of AI development is like somewhat reasonable that year, or at least you did when you, as of the time you wrote the report. Later we're going to talk about ways in which you guys have changed your minds. Um, as of when you wrote the report, the date at which we get superhuman AI is like somewhat reasonable. The like shape of the trajectory of AI development, like how the degree to which it gets quicker or whatever, that's somewhat reasonable. Um, the extent of number of like crazy things happening or like the overall vibe of the story is like somewhat reasonable, and it's concrete such that like, maybe many of the super concrete things are like kind of unlikely, but like in any way that the world is going to turn out, there are going to be a bunch of unlikely concrete things.
Yeah,
Is
like
that roughly fair?
I think that's pretty right. Like basically like for the like overall like most important points, we tried to get them right. Or like we try to say what we think is most likely, and then like for timelines, there's like we could debate about whether that means like the median or the mode or whatever. But basically like you know but also for like misalignment and for like government involvement, like kind of like the high level things, we tried to like basically say what we thought was most likely, and then and then we had to like fill in a bunch of details that obviously like that we were like that specific thing is unlikely. Like for example, like it's just very hard to predict what the AI's goals will be, but we really tried to force ourselves to like predict a specific thing that the goals would be. In our case, that was like the AIs would like terminally adopt instrumental convergent goals.
Yeah.
And we believe that particular thing is like, not is I forget what we said, maybe like 10% or 20% or something, but like, you know, it's just like very hard to predict the AI's exact goals. So like anything you say individually will like be unlikely.
Gotcha. Um, and like, so the structure of AI 2027, as I understand it, is there are some like numerical forecasts that, or when you go to the page, when you go to ai-2027.com, I believe it is, you basically read this story, right? You read the story of like a crazy thing that's going to happen, and it's like slightly choose your own adventure, and that there's a forking path later. Um, but also there's like these, if you go to the appendices or whatever, right? There's these sort of numerical forecasts of like, okay, how do we think that AI timelines are going to go, and how do we think that AI takeoff is going to go, and stuff like that. I'm wondering like how much is the story like an illustration of a thing that is happening in those forecasts, where like you kind of do the forecast and then you write the story of like, here's what it would look like for this numerical forecast to come true, versus how much is it like, oh, we like, the story and the forecasts were like really playing into each other a lot.
Yeah, good question. So, one other thing I'd flag is that there are also numerical forecasts in the like side panel on the right. Like as you
Right,
like
right.
look at the scenario, there's like this panel with a bunch of forecasts as well. Um, yeah, so I think it depended some on the like forecast you're talking about. So for the compute forecasts, that a lot of the work for that was done pretty early on. And so yeah, basically that I think was basically just ported into the scenario. Also, the compute forecaster, I think that's relatively like easy to change, right? Like after we write the scenario, we can like adjust the compute numbers a bit, and it like generally won't change things, by a very large amount.
Yep.
For some of the other things, for example, but yeah, but the other thing I'd say is the AI goals forecast, I think was actually like a decent description of like kind of like we were like, okay, what goals does Jay have? Or like we don't know, so we like wrote out a bunch of like hypotheses, and like that turned into the kind of like AI goals research supplement or AI goals forecast. And like yeah, and I think that sort of was an example that generally like we kind of like did that, and then we ported it in what we thought was like what most likely into the scenario or story. um the timelines and takeoff forecasts were a bit less like that, partially because they were done a bit later, especially than the compute forecast, and partially because uh just like to change the timelines and takeoff in the scenario is just like a lot of work basically.
Yeah.
Like if we wanted to like change it to happen in 2028 or 2029, or to take off to be like 2x faster or 2x slower,
Yeah.
it would just be a pretty large amount of work to do that. So we didn't make many changes. It did inform things a bit. I think for example, I think the takeoff forecast informed like the relative like placement of the different like milestones, like achieving like coding automation versus like full research automation versus like super intelligence.
Yeah.
But like otherwise, like mainly they were just kind of like in sort of like explanation of our reasoning rather than like something that like we like gamed it out and then we ported it like exactly into the scenario.
Okay, fair enough. So I guess we said a little bit about what AI 2027 is. Like, actually, or what sort of thing it is. For those who haven't gotten around to reading it, can you kind of briefly say what happens in AI 2027? How does it go?
Yeah. So yeah, so basically so it starts in mid 2025 which is when we release it. Um and essentially what's happening basically up through the end of 2026 is mostly that just like AIs are like getting better and especially getting better at coding.
Yeah.
So they're kind of like and they're starting to speed up AI research significantly. So I believe we say, like in early 2026 they're like kind of like speeding up the rate of AI software progress by 1.5x compared to if it were just humans. And so yeah, this is basically the main story of sort of like the first few years. And then in 2027 things start to get more crazy, so various things happen. The AIs are really approaching the level of fully automating coding, basically, and they're doing this in like early 2027. And because of this, China decides to steal the model weights of the leading company, which we call Open Brain. Yeah, and then this kind of like makes the arms race even stronger than it was before, because the sort of like race is closer now, because China was well behind before. And then yeah, over the course of 2027, what happens in terms of capabilities is that there's kind of this intelligence explosion where the AI is enabled to like basically recursively self-improve. So they get better, they get more capable, they get faster at like improving themselves, and they get basically this loop, right? So they get more capable, which makes them faster at doing research, which makes them more capable, et cetera,
Right.
et cetera. And in the AI 2027 scenario, this is enough to get an explosion from like coding automation to superintelligence, where superintelligence is like much better than the best humans at every cognitive task. And this happens in about a year. So that's kind of what's happening in terms of capabilities. And then in terms of kind of like sort of like the reaction to these capabilities, the government starts to get much more involved because they're realizing the importance of the technology. Also, the companies are kind of like asking, kind of like getting them, like purposely trying to get them involved in some ways, because they want sort of like a good relationship with the government. The government can help them like maybe protect their model weights or other stuff like that. And they don't want basically they don't want to be like hiding, like if they're like hiding their capabilities from the government, and the government like later like finds them out, like, oh, you were like hiding these very capable AIs, like that would that's something the companies don't want. We posit. So they're kind of like working with the government. The government gets more involved. Then the AIs are misaligned. So in particular, there's kind of this progression, but basically they're getting misaligned in various ways, and over time they're getting more coherently misaligned. So they're getting closer to like, it's not just like they take actions that aren't in line with human goals. It's like they're like actively having different goals from humans. So it's like moving down that progression over time towards being like more like kind of like coherently or adversarially misaligned. And then there's like these warning signs of misalignment that are noticed inside the company. Like it seems like the AIs are kind of trying to sabotage alignment research, for example. And so yeah, and then there's basically a decision point where like China is still not very far behind because of the model weight theft. They're like a few months behind. And then there's a decision point where this kind of committee of like government and like company people together, and they kind of vote on like whether to continue the race or whether to like slow down at least a bit due to these like warning signs. And by the way, there was also pressure put on because someone basically like quit, like after the company initially was like, we're not, we're just going to keep going, this safety stuff is fine. Someone quit and like leaked their sort of like memo with all the sort of like warning signs to the New York Times. And so anyways, and then in short, basically, yeah, so in the ending where they just keep racing, the AIs, the misaligned AIs basically like continue to self-improve, and since they're building the next version of themselves, they're able to like align themselves, they're able to not align the next generation to their own goals, because basically they fully automated the research process. And then eventually basically they get deployed throughout the company, throughout government, etc., because they're so capable and because they're also like, maybe like doing a bit of persuasion and stuff as well.
Yeah.
And then, and then there's this industrial explosion. So there's kind of like intelligence explosion in 2027, then industrial explosion in 2028, where in the industrial explosion, that means that like the AIs are not just getting more cognitively capable, they're also like, building up things in like the physical world. So they're like building robots, which build more robots, et cetera, et cetera. And so by the time it's like 2030 in this sort of like race ending, the AIs are basically controlling, like functionally basically controlling everything, like because they're so capable, they like basically, there might be like humans like technically supposed to prove things, but they don't really like have much power just because the AIs are so capable.
Yeah.
There's like race dynamics to like, if one country like doesn't put the AIs in charge and like do an industrial explosion, then another one will and wreck that country. So, anyways, and so yeah, there's a deal. There's a like phantom deal made, but between the U.S. and China, to sort of diffuse the race dynamics. I believe that happens in 2028. And but actually is kind of like both of the AIs are misaligned. So like they agree, we're like, okay, we're gonna like, create new like AI chips which will like put these AIs on such that they can only run like, the AIs with these goals. Like they're kind of like merged to like both follow the US AI's goals and the China AI's goals. So it looks great, but what they didn't know is that both of the AIs were misaligned.
Yeah.
So yeah. Anyways, and then eventually like they're kind of like, our view is that it's kind of like overdetermined. Like once you have these like AIs that everyone's deferring to that are misaligned and they're running everything. Though in the sort of like scenario, we specifically posited a mechanism of like a bioweapon that the AI would use, to sort of kill most of the humans or almost all the humans. Yeah,
This happens in like 2030, right?
yeah, this happens in 2030. So basically, we're saying like our threat model is, yeah, like the AIs are not in a rush. Basically, they're just like making sure they like really have like self-sufficiency so that like, they could just survive on their own, with like extremely high probability. And then yeah, in the others ending, I mean, basically it's similar except that in the ending we say that basically the company slows down a bit, they switch to like a more like safe paradigm of like their sort of like AI development. I guess I can go into that more potentially, but I'll try to wrap up. But basically they switch to a more safe paradigm of AI development. Then otherwise, like things continue pretty similarly, like except now, like, like they sort of like, it seems like their AIs are likely aligned, but they're not sure because they only had a few months of sort of like lead time. And so they don't have that much time to really test and make sure that their improvements are working. But it ends up that it was working, and then we actually have a very similar thing to the race ending, where there's a deal between the U.S. and China. But in this case, the China's AIs are misaligned, but the U.S. AIs are aligned.
Yep.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So like, I guess the first thing to ask is why are there two endings? Like normally in forecasts, you might think that it would just be like one story. Like what's why? And my understanding is that in the text you're like, yeah, we think the race thing is like more likely. So why include the other one?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fair question. I think, yeah, I mean, I'm actually trying to remember the what the biggest reasons are. I think from an earlier point we wanted to have basically like I think, yeah, I guess there were a few things. One is that I think we just thought it was like valuable to be like, okay, if we condition on success, what does that look like?
Yeah.
We just think it's valuable to kind of like show like where we thought kind of the key like differences were, decision points were, between these two outcomes. And I think we also ourselves found it useful. Like for example, like we tried for a while to like generate a kind of like slowdown ending that ended well, that was more robust, that wasn't like more robust to, the possibility that you couldn't just slow down for like 2 or 3 months and use that to solve alignment. And so, yeah, but we had trouble writing anything that seemed realistic. And I think that was a valuable exercise for us.
Okay.
And that's a valuable exercise to know, is that at least it seemed like we found it, it was very hard to make the kind of like geopolitical assumptions that were needed for like things to go well,
Right.
if you really need a lot of time to sort of like slow down to solve alignment. And so, but yeah, I think one more consideration was just that we didn't want to like I think if we only had one ending, we were a bit worried that like, people would think that we were like more confident than we were
Okay.
in like this happening, or it just generally seemed better to kind of like appeal to a wider range of audiences, basically to like show that like we're not like basically we're like interested in gaming out both outcomes, and we think both of them are like plausible to happen and stuff. Yeah.
Gotcha. So when you say like conditioning on success and like it being hard to find a robust outcome, should I understand that to mean that like by your lights as of when you wrote the thing, the good ending, it's not just that like the world got lucky by people choosing to slow down. There were like other like that ending features like a few like several places where like people basically humanity gets luckier than it should. Do I understand that correctly or no?
Yeah, that's right. I think we think that like or like yeah, I think at least we like or like I think at a minimum something all the authors would endorse is like in the slowdown ending they were not able to be very confident that things would go well. They did not have enough like leeway. Like the race dynamics were still strong, and so like it was still just a like very very uncomfortably fast intelligence explosion, even though they had a bit more time. And so, yeah. That's just what I mean. Is yeah, like I think different authors have like different exact probabilities on it, but I think uh it would be yeah like it would have been nice to feel like we had like a story that was more robust, basically. Yeah.
Fair enough. Um yeah, so you say the different authors. Like can you give me a sense of like basically who worked on this and what like did you all work on everything or was there a thing that you sort of like focused on and specialized in?
Um. Yeah. So I guess the full-time people who worked on it were Daniel, I mentioned earlier, Daniel Cucatello, and then Thomas Larson and me.
Hmm.
Um, so the first version of what turned into AX27 was actually written in early 2024.
Hmm.
So like we started the project that ended up becoming AXRP27 like over a year before we published it.
Yep.
At that point, it was mostly just me and like Daniel helping a bit.
Yep.
And I made a first draft that was, I mean, a lot of the features stayed the same from the end, but a lot of stuff also changed. And also the end one was much better,
Yep.
more well written. And then Thomas started working with us about like 6 months into that, something around like mid 2024, and then there were kind of 9 months after that. And in terms of like who did what, like yeah, I mean, I think Daniel kind of like had the overall vision for the project. I think he contributed a lot of the like kind of like high level narrative that we sort of like used. But then I think Thomas and I both, also worked a bunch on like basically all aspects of the scenario content. So I think I'd say like, Daniel, Thomas, and I all like were sort of like working on everything in the scenarios. There were some specializations, but we were sort of like all discussing and working on everything to some extent. I think near the end, I was specializing in timelines and takeoff forecasts. I was working on the supplements, etc. So I was doing some of that. And then we had also someone helping Romeo Dean, who was working part-time on it for most of the project, and he did the compute and security forecasts. And then so we also like he also basically wrote or like kind of like helped a bunch with those parts of the scenario as well. Yeah, and then I think yeah, so and then I think Thomas also was doing just a lot of the kind of like scenario drafting near the end, as I was like helping some of that, but also like yeah, as I was saying, doing the timelines and takeoff forecasts. Yeah, and then also Scott Alexander, who spent substantially less time on it than any of us, including Romeo, but was probably a very large contributor to the success. Basically, he just like rewrote like a few drafts, and each one, including like the final one, he just like rewrote it to be a lot more engaging.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So I think probably the most well, I guess there are a few striking things about the scenario. Probably one really striking thing is that in the ending you think is more likely everyone ends up dead. That's pretty scary. But I think the one that made it into the name is that we basically get superhuman AI in 2027. Can you tell us a little bit like what's the model of like I think to a lot of people that strikes that will seem like pretty soon, right? A pretty quick time to get like superhuman AI. So what's the like driver of that prediction?
Do you mean like super like yeah, do you mean, but when you say superhuman AI, do you mean like broadly superhuman, like better than the top human at every task or something like that? Um,
That is what I meant. If I'm
okay.
misremembering the scenario, then my
Oh,
apologies.
no, 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 no. I'm just, because the answer changes depending on like what milestone you're talking about a bit.
Yeah,
But yeah.
I think I'm talking about broadly super intelligent AI.
Okay, okay. Yeah, so I guess the reason, like, yeah, I think Daniel, as I mentioned, 2027 was Daniel's median for this kind of like definition of AGI,
Hmm.
or super, maybe super intelligence, maybe his median for 2020 for super intelligence, but basically around that time, when we started writing it, I think his intuitions at the time were around something like it felt like the AIs were already very good at things that weren't like long horizon agency,
Yeah.
and we mainly just needed to train the AIs to be good at long horizon agency. When I say long horizon agency, I mean things like, well, basically doing tasks that take like many steps, and making up progress on things for very large amounts of steps in time, and like that requires maybe like one of the biggest things is just like noticing and correcting mistakes, and doing that reliably, and then also like being good at like, yeah, basically like breaking down the problem and like telling if you're like making progress and like switching to different approaches and stuff. And so and I think Daniel's view is that we hadn't scaled up like the training on long horizon agency very much. And so like, yeah, maybe like, you know, like if we just sort of had a few more orders of magnitude of like training focused on this, this would sort of like be enough. And then I think another part of his view was that at the time he was like, there's not really any benchmark you can extrapolate that will like saturate after 2027 or maybe even after like 2026 or something.
Hmm.
So this was in 2024, by the way, so that's 2 years ago. Uh and then I think over time we developed, once Meter released their like time horizon um benchmark,
Yep.
we found that useful as like, obviously there are many flaws with it. We can discuss the flaws if you want, but we found it to be like, the most useful thing in terms of like extrapolating and informing when we might get to AGI, or like in particular we could extrapolate when we got to coding automation
Yep.
and then reason about what happened after that. And so the meter chart that I'm talking about is, it's like how basically like how much our AI is improving at coding in the units of like how long it takes humans to do the task. So like, maybe like currently the AI, I believe the AIs have like a 50% chance of doing a task that take, I forget exactly, but let's say 10 hours, and then like
I think it's 14
14
is our
hours.
latest number.
Sure, 14 hours. And then, a year ago, maybe it was like, I mean, probably like 2 hours or something. And so, we're basically just extrapolating this sort of trend. There's various ways you can extrapolate that. We can also talk about that if you want, but basically like, yeah, so there's different ways to extrapolate it, and then there's also like a question of like what time horizon do you need to sort of like to reach the level of full coding automation.
Hmm.
So there's kind of two components, right? One is predicting the trajectory of the time horizon, and then the other one is predicting like what time horizon is needed
Yep.
to get to full coding automation. And that was basically what our sort of like initial timelines forecast did, that we released alongside AI 2027.
Yep.
And it did this sort of like extrapolation, and then did a few more things, like it tried to account for AI R&D automation. Yeah, it tried to account for like, the it tried to account for the internal external gap or various things like this. But
Yep.
mainly it was just like, like a lot of it was just a simple extrapolation. Then once we did that, so my timelines have been a bit longer, but actually after doing this work on this sort of like simple timelines forecast,
Yep.
it did get shorter, not as short as Daniel's, but I was thinking, maybe like my median for sort of AGI or broadly superhuman AI was around 2031 at that point.
Okay.
Or it would have been more like the mid 2030s, earlier, like a year before we published AI 27 and before the meter trend came out and stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, and then yeah, our timelines views have evolved since then. But anyways, I guess going back, trying to answer succinctly the original question. So basically, like if we want to predict whether AGI will happen in 2027, well, our view was that maybe we first focus on coding automation. The reason we focus on that is because we think that basically like it's important to predict when AI research will get automated, because after AI research gets automated, it's plausible that we'll see this, very, very quick improvement in AI capabilities, which would maybe then lead to sort of broadly superhuman AI or AGI, right? And so we predict coding automation, and then if depending on how you do this extrapolation,
Yep.
It can potentially say that things happen very quickly. In particular, if you think that the sort of like trend, the sort of like trend of like time horizon, AI's time horizon versus like calendar time, if you think that that will be like significantly super exponential in the near future, if you think there's a significant chance of that, then you think that there might be full coding automation by like, 2026 or like early 2027. And then we have a separate forecast of like, like how long does it take to get full automation to other milestones. So full automation of coding. So, first we predict full automation of coding, then we predict full automation of all AI research,
Yep.
so including like non-coding tasks, and then we predict how long from that to like AGI. And so yeah, and then I would say this sort of like, why is it plausible that this takeoff could be so fast from coding automation to sort of like, AGI? And yeah, I mean, I think the short answer is something like, well, one, we have a bunch of uncertainty about the feedback loops,
Yep.
but when we try to sort of like run the numbers, basically like it seems very plausible that the feedback loop will be very fast, and basically like, we'll be getting more and more capable. We'll be getting more capable AI, which can like more quickly create the next AI, which is more capable, et cetera, et cetera. We have a lot of uncertainty about how that will play out because there's also diminishing returns to more sort of like software research.
Yep.
But it seems very plausible based on sort of like the parameters that we've estimated that it'll happen very fast. Yeah, and so basically that's why those are kind of the two steps in our argument. One is that full coding automation could come, by 2026 or early 2027, and the next is that like superintelligence could, or like AGI could come like, within like months or like a year after
Right.
this coding automation. And one other thing I'll say quickly as well is that one thing that affects our view is that the takeoff speeds. So when I say takeoff speeds, and in this context, I'm meaning the time between full coding automation and, AGI or superintelligence.
Mm.
The takeoff, that speed is quite correlated in our view with the like time between now and full coding automation, basically just because, kind of like a lot of the uncertainty we have in both cases is in something like, if we put certain like inputs into AI progress, how much output do we get per input, or like how much capabilities do we get per input?
Right.
So yeah. So for example, like if we are going to achieve full coding automation in like, a year, that's a sign that like, it didn't take that much like, training compute and like algorithmic progress to like reach full coding automation. So that's highly correlated with it requiring less of this sort of like compute and algorithmic progress to get from coding automation to like AGI and superintelligence.
Right. So yeah, maybe let's. Yeah, I think I want to chat about both the phase up to superhuman coders and then from superhuman coders to superintelligence. So I guess this is going to talk a lot about the meter time horizon work. So that you and I guess the audience know, I currently work at Meter. I don't work on I'm not one of the people who does the time horizon stuff. This is not a Meter publication. Nothing that I say is indicative of anything that anyone at Meter thinks, including me. But I mean, for real, it's important to say that. But I don't know. I mean, I'm interested in it. I guess as we maybe as I sort of revealed from my comment about the current time horizon, where we're recording this at a time when its time horizon is it's not saturated, but it's getting saturated-ish. So
yeah, this to be clear, the specific meter suite, like the concept of time horizons can be applied to like.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Our time horizons are getting close to being saturated. So let's talk about the time horizon forecast. So in particular, like, if you go to meter.org, we have our nice little graph. We've got this exponential curve of time horizon versus year, and my understanding is that you are not doing that. Is that correct?
Well, yeah. I mean, I guess maybe we should separate out a few things. But in our original model, we had some weight on super exponential and some weight on exponential.
Yeah.
Also, I should clarify. So in the future, like, so the naive way to do things is when we say super exponential or exponential, do it based on like the release date.
Yeah.
So like you might expect that, like every year, like the time horizon doubles 2 times or something like that.
Yeah.
However, generally in our modeling, we don't do it by calendar year because there's various factors that might make like there to be more or less like, excuse me, some kind of like scale up of AI inputs into sort of AI progress, depending on what's going on. Like, for example, like if we just think there's like, let's just say, we don't get AGI soon. Well, the inputs to progress are going to slow down quite a lot in a few years because, the kind of like amount of like investment and sort of like compute production scaling that has been happening in terms of like, or like the amount of compute produced for like AI chips, it's not scalable basically. So, in a few years, again, if we haven't, automated a bunch of stuff, like, we'll see the slowdown in training compute increases. Similarly, for like a slowdown in sort of like the amount of researchers working, like right now, I think Anthropic has been maybe like 3xing their like, or maybe even more, I forget, but like they're basically like they're growing extremely quickly and in a way that would not be sustainable up until like the 2030s or something in terms of their like research headcount, or like quality adjusted researchers. And so both of these inputs are going to be slowing down. So in that case, that's one reason we would not want to operate on calendar time.
Yeah.
And then also it could speed up, right? So if we automate AI R&D, for example, then there might be like there's kind of like higher amounts of labor going into like software progress, right? So we might expect to see the time horizon try and go like faster than if we sort of naively did it by release date. So all that said, I think generally, so in our modeling, the way we sort of do it is we we have the time horizon try and be in intuitively like a measure of like the amount of inputs that have like gone into AI, rather than like the calendar time.
Yeah.
More particularly, we basically have the x-axis be like the log of effective compute,
Yeah.
where effective compute is the amount of like training compute that has been like applied to the leading AI, and then also multiplied by like a modifier to account for algorithms getting more efficient.
Got it.
And data getting more efficient. So yeah. And so okay, so all that said, yeah, so then there's a question of like, I think what you're asking is basically, yeah, should it be like exponential or super exponential? Should the time horizon be exponential or super exponential in terms of like log effective compute?
Yeah.
And what are we treating at? So in our original model, we had a mixture where it was like 40% or I think it was 45% exponential, 45% super exponential, 10% sub exponential.
Yeah.
Basically because like I think at the time, and yeah, we put a lot less sort of like work into that model than our later one. But yeah, basically I think my reasoning at the time was something like, I don't know, it seems like it should probably be super exponential, but like I don't know, like if there's much like empirical support for that, and like a bunch of other people seem to disagree. So like maybe I'll just like give similar weight to both of them. But in our late, so there's no single answer. But like with our original model, the answer is like we had some of both.
Yeah.
With the new model, so obviously it depends what parameters you give to it again. But basically I have like 10% on like exponential or sub exponential, and 90% on super exponential, with a large spread of like how super exponential, right? So like our if you we have like a number basically in our model I can which basically says like how what is by what factor like increase in sort of like or like decrease in log effective compute does like each successive doubling take. So for example, it could be super exponential, but it could be like 0.99. So each one is like 99%, takes 99% as like many like orders of magnitude of effective compute as the like previous one.
Yeah.
And that one is super exponential, but like in practice it usually is like there aren't enough sort of like cycles for it to like compound itself that strongly.
Yeah.
Anyways, but
so why is it super like why do you, and in particular it's super exponential where like each doubling is shorter than the last doubling by some constant factor roughly, if I understand right?
Yeah, basically, yeah.
So why that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the like basically just it seems like AI should eventually have an infinite time horizon. The reason it seems like they should eventually have an infinite time horizon is that well, like sort of like currently the way you figure out the AI's time horizon is you have these like you have a bunch of tasks, you have like humans, how long it took humans to do the tasks, And currently what happens is
How
that,
long it takes like expert-ish humans?
yeah,
Also, sometimes it's just estimates.
yes, that's true.
Yeah.
How long we get either expert humans took or we think expert humans took. But yeah. Um and then you see whether the AI succeed. And what we currently observe empirically is that AIs are sort of like much better, like they can achieve like a vast majority of the tasks that took humans like less than a minute, something like that. But they struggle more and more with things that take longer. Um, yeah, I think, yeah, maybe one other piece of context here is that like, so I think meter doesn't really have like a specific definition of like how many resources the AIs get to do the task. So it's not like yeah, or I guess I'll just say like in our model, when we discuss time horizons, we sort of like have the requirement that for an AI to count as succeeding, it needs to like solve it at least as efficiently as a human
Yeah.
would. And then that intuitively it's that. I could go into slightly more detail if desired, but maybe I should keep going. And so and so yeah, so we have a requirement for AI solving efficiently, and then but there might be a hypothesis. Okay, but like, why are like AIs currently like, why does the curve look like this? Like, why do AIs do so much worse on longer tasks than shorter tasks? And one possible reason is that they're much worse than humans at long horizon agency, right? So like
Yeah.
AIs are really good. They have a lot of like knowledge, they have a lot of heuristics, et cetera, but they're not as good at like consistently making progress on things that are like longer and longer.
Yeah.
But like it doesn't necessarily have to be this way. In fact, like humans aren't perfect at long horizon agency. So like AIs eventually should be like should be like better than humans at long horizon agency.
Yeah.
So plausibly they should in some sense get increasingly better than humans as the task length is longer, right?
Yeah.
And if this were true, and again, there's various like definitional details about like the efficiencies and stuff, but
Also, the set of tasks, right? Like, if there are some tasks that humans can't do that AIs can, and there are some tasks that AIs can't do that humans can, then like your 50% time horizon is very sensitive to like
yeah,
what are 50% of tasks.
yeah, and so but I think there is a strong intuition here where like it is the case that AIs will eventually be better at general agency than humans.
Yeah.
And if this is true, it seems like probably like plausibly the curve would actually flip. So, and like again, maybe depending on the details, but like under at least some definitions, it seems like the curve should even like the AI should have like higher success rates compared to humans as tasks get longer. And in that case, the AI's time horizon would be infinite. Maybe another that was kind of like a specific like intuition for why this might happen, but
although there's some trickiness there because the time horizon test, like the data is not like how long do humans typically take or what fraction of like the baselines are conditioned on human success, right?
yeah,
How long does it take the humans? So there's this funny thing where like if like 1 in 10,000 humans can do a thing in like 1 hour, and like 30% of AIs can do that task, then we say, oh yeah, the 50% time horizon of AIs is like, or if an AI could do those tasks, 30% of the time, we say that their 50% time horizon is lower than 1 hour, even though like it was even harder for the humans on average. Yeah. There's this kind of a funny thing about like the meter, the time horizon, the time estimates for tasks. They're not really taking into account like human success probability.
yeah, I agree.
In a way that's somewhat intuitive.
I think there's a bunch of potentially intuitive definitional things. Yeah, one thing I would say is I think the like definition that like conceptually appeals the most to me.
Yeah.
And maybe like or like it's also doesn't like your thing also doesn't describe like it's not in practice the case that meter had like a ton of people like fail and then it was like more like up to like a few. But yeah, I think that like the thing that seems more elegant to me as a definition is just like you pick a human like basically the way we said it was like you take like a coding task that is involved in AI R&D. You have someone who is like kind of typical like for doing the task, or it could be the selected expert, try to do it.
Yeah.
And then like you just like see how long it takes them to do the task.
Yeah.
And like you always assume that they will finish it eventually. With the reasoning being something like yeah, basically like in the limit, like if people had like infinite
like just try every possible strategy.
Something like that. Yeah, like if we really take it into the limit, yeah, you can just like try basically, yeah, you can try every possible strategy or something. And so, and that's the thing that's like kind of was the most appealing to me. But yeah, I mean, I think yeah, I think maybe I also like um another way to put it that maybe I should have also led with is just like maybe is more potentially more robust to definitions, but you could also quibble about, I think, is just like, look, like we're talking like at some point there'll be an AI that is like just like more capable than humans at every task, or like at least that's our belief, you know. And in the sense that like, yeah, like essentially, yeah, I mean essentially every task, or at least like, you know, at least like the vast majority of tasks, there'll be an AI that you can take the best human in the world and they'll be like a heavy favorite over that human in terms of like who could accomplish that task faster. um and if that's the case, it seems like even it, like it's hard to say exactly what the like time horizon curve would look like or something, but like basically it'll be like almost 100% at every task length as an intuition. And if that's true, that's like infinite. And then if it has to eventually get to that point, right, then if it has to get to an infinite, then like then it needs to be super exponential. There's a question about exactly what that will look like, but you know,
Yeah.
you probably expect it to not be like so sudden, right? You're not going to just like suddenly jump from like sort of the current like logistic shape to like suddenly like everything being above 50%. You know, probably the like logistic kind of like slope. By logistic I mean just like the fit, like so currently meters like fits the way they determine the time horizon is they like, you know, they look at these sort of like tasks, sorry, a simplified way to say it is that they look at the AI's sort of like success rate at tasks in different like buckets of different like human calibrated time horizons.
Yeah.
Then they like fit a logistic to,
which is just like an S curve. It just goes.
yeah.
Or actually it goes. But
they
whatever.
fit a logistic to that, and I get, and then yeah, and then the logistic kind of like, you know, is showing, it's kind of like assuming like, you know, at some point we're gonna like reach, you know, close to excuse me, at some point we're gonna reach like close to 0% success rate at a certain point, but like, you know, near like 1 second, if it takes even 1 second, the AI is like very reliable, right? And then and then it kind of like interpolates between those. And basically my claim would be something like, you know, over time we're gonna like observe. So interestingly, it seems like this is maybe not happening yet, what I'm about to say, but I would claim that if my theory is true, eventually we'll see the logistic slope like flattening. So like the AIs will like, you know, like we'll see some combination of there's the AIs getting better at the longest task, but also maybe the logistic slope like flattening a bit in some sense, because because they're getting better longer as an agency. And then eventually we'll get to the point where they're, you know, like above 50% or above 80% success rate on all the tasks. But like, you know, it won't be like fully sudden. There'll be some sort of like transition. So it won't be like we have an exponential and then suddenly there's like, you know, an asymptote. That seems kind of weird. It's more like there'll be some sort of super exponential and then an asymptote.
Yeah, I think there's this guy Lisanal Gaib on Twitter who's done some analysis of the how the slope changes.
Yeah.
So maybe I have not double checked this person's work. This person does seem to be our Meter's biggest super fan. But so basically I hear you saying like, okay, you know, like on some level it sort of makes sense that the curve is going to go to infinity, and then like once you already have the curve going to infinity, it seems like at what point you say it counts as a superhuman coder doesn't matter very much, because if you like 1000x it, like that just adds a few more seconds. If it's like in the asymptote.
Yeah. Something like that. I mean, it depends how strong the super exponential is, right?
Sure. Yeah. And then I guess like I guess the real question is like, how do you figure out like when the curve is going to infinity, right? So like in AI 2027, like the curve goes to infinity in 2027. Like what makes 2027 a reasonable year for that to happen versus like, you know, 2053 or something?
Yeah. I think this is one of the reasons like time. Yeah. Like obviously this is one of the limitation. Like this is maybe the biggest limitation of our method of the like time horizon thing is that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think there are two big ones. One is that it's very hard to like set the shape of the zero exponential, and one is that like people disagree wildly on like the like level of like capability needed to have an automated coder or superhuman coder. But yeah, I mean, I think the way yeah, so maybe to help sort of like explain the way I said it, it helps to talk about like a different like intuition for super exponentiality, which is like related but not exactly the same to the sort of like infinite thing. And so I think there's often intuition that in some sense there is like fewer like extra skills needed to get from, for example, like solving like 100-year task to a 500-year task as compared to like a 1-minute task versus a 5-minute task.
Hmm.
Um, and I actually had this trouble like writing this. Like it's hard to write it out in sort of a way that's really like formally like sound or something. But like you have to make various assumptions. But anyways, like my guess is that there's a way to do it better than what I've come up with in the past. But basically there's this intuition that I and a lot of others have, which is something like that. It's like once you can do like, you know, whatever, like a 100-year task, like you can just like you already have all these long horizon agency skills. There's not many like skills needed left to do a 500-year task. So like
Hmm.
to the extent that like one potential way to say it is that to the extent that like longer tasks are like more weighted, like the improvements you need to go to do from 100 to 500-year are more based on just like improving your long horizon agency a little, while like improving 1 to 5 minute, a lot of it is just like learning like a ton of like different skills.
Yeah.
And so like maybe like another way to put it is something like well, long horizon agency skills are things that help you with like a wide variety of tasks, right? And so like similar skills help you like both sort of like across different tasks. Like similar long horizon agency skills can apply to both these tasks, just like, you know, being able to generally correct, make better plans, et cetera, like just
Yeah.
helps for both of those. And then also within a task, right? Like, you know, like if you're struggling to do a very long task, if you improve your long horizon agency skills, it'll like improve like many different steps of the task, basically.
Hmm.
um so this is maybe another way to kind of like try to convey this intuition, or like try to formalize it a little, of like, you know, like there's just not, in some sense it is like easier to go from 100 to 500 years than from like 1 to 5 minutes
Hmm.
in term. And so that is basically one of the ways. So like that intuition driving it is one of the ways that informed what we sort of like set these like super exponential parameters to be. Is I like, before, you know, I like blinded as to what it would imply for the super exponential parameters, like elicited like my like beliefs about, you know, basically like the relative like difficulty of going between various things, and then I tried to like as best I could like fit our like simple function that didn't exactly fit my beliefs, but
Yeah.
as best I could like set that like simple function parameter to like match somewhat close to what my intuitions were for that. So that was one thing. Another thing that I'm sort of like generally conflicted about how to put much weight on is like sort of the basically predicting the past well. People call it different, like backcasting or like
Yeah.
retrodicting, etc. And like, yeah, this is pretty tricky because like on the one hand, you know, my beliefs about super exponential upending eventually are not really sensitive to like the past data. Like some
Hmm.
people like to be like, oh look, it looks like a super exponential because like, you know, there has been it does seem like there's been some level of speed up over time in the trend.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's a bit, maybe a bit cheating or something to or like if my belief in there eventually being super exponential is not that sensitive to exactly what we observe now, maybe it's weird to like fit the parameter based on exactly what we observe.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, I give like some weight to it. I'm like, yeah, it is at least like, you know, it's better to like fit the past data than not, basically. So
Okay.
so I think those were basically the two main ways I said it were based on the intuitions, and like, yeah, intuitions about relative difficulty between like jumps between time horizons, and like like giving a bit of weight to like, you know, fitting, not, you know, like fitting the past data at least vaguely or something. Yeah.
Gotcha. And then so uh I guess there's a few more things just about this forecast that I want to return to, but like I think a question that I've had in the back of my mind, or when reading AI 2027, is like basically how solid is this? And like it seems like one way I could interpret that is saying like, okay, if I have different intuitions from Eli, and if I can have a thing that fits my intuitions and also like, you know, fits the past data well, like potentially like I can have an asymptote, like I can have the asymptote be in like 2045 rather than 2027, and like if, you know, maybe that's like basically just as legit.
Yeah.
Yeah, what do you think of that?
I mean, by the way, I should also say, I mean, I was kind of describing the process I used for getting the frame in our most recent model.
Yeah.
In the older one, it was more crude. It was just like, I don't know, it's like 0.9, or like,
Right,
it was
right.
just like, we'll just set it to like 0.9, you know, it seems roughly reasonable or something, you know. So the older one was more crude, and we didn't have an uncertainty over the parameter in the original one. And I should also say, like, um So like there are various other things that change between like like a lot of reason our like later model yeah, like our more recent model predicts like later like automated coder is that the older model had like too large of an effect from AI R&D automation. And there are a few other things also, but like one of the big things was like yeah, not just like these parameter adjustments, but also like we realized we were like modeling an R&D automation in like an erroneous way that was making things faster. So like yeah, so like that's one of the reasons we have less probability now in like 2027 than we did when we had the original model. Is just like yeah, like our new model has a lot less effect from AI R&D automation pre-automated coder. Um, and then yeah, and then in terms of like fitting different people's intuitions, yeah, I mean I think honestly I think this is just like an unavoidable problem currently with like timelines forecasting, and I think it will be a problem until we have something that more people can agree on. Like basically what we need, like we have been in a long time in search of like, you know, a trend that we can extrapolate, and we can like
Yeah.
different people can roughly agree like, oh yeah, actually that's a reasonable extrapolation, you know, or like converge to some extent, not fully, but to some extent on like, okay, what sort of extrapolation should we do? And then also similarly again, like converge to some extent, but not fully on like, okay, what level of capability represents automated coder or AGI or whatever. So like, and the meter trend, like I think does that better than like any previous thing, but there's still a lot of room to go. And like I think basically it's currently an unavoidable problem to sort of like have it be loaded based on people's intuitions until we have more consensus on like an actual trend that people agree like can be like, you know, extrapolated in a certain way, and like, you know, we can somewhat agree on like what different like, you know, levels of like that metric mean.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so yeah, I guess it's tricky because like I think the kind of simplest thing you could do would be to just like follow the dotted line on the meter graph. And like so this ignores any like feedback loops of like the doublings getting faster, which like may or may not be a good thing depending on like how likely you think that is versus like how valuable you find being simple. But then you'll like once you're in exponential versus basically hyperbolic world, like now it really does matter a lot, like whether you think a superhuman coder is like 100 hours or like 1,000 hours or 10,000 hours for something. So I, which is also like pretty hard to figure out. So
Yeah, yeah. Um, I mean, I also sorry, I want to flag that. So in our initial model, we discussed superhuman coder,
yeah,
which was defined as like basically like an AI that, if you like replaced all your coders with the AIs,
yeah,
they would be going as productively as the humans were going, except there were 30x more of those coding agents than there were humans, and they're also going 30x faster. Or like maybe another way to put it is like if you like took your human workforce, made 30 copies of each of them, and sped them up by 30x,
yeah.
you'd be like indifferent between like having that workforce and having the superhuman coder workforce.
Got it.
But like in our later modeling, it seemed like basically there are various reasons, but we decided more to focus on automated coder, which is like a weaker milestone. I mean, still like in my opinion pretty strong, but a bit weaker in that like basically it has to be able to replace all the humans, but it doesn't have to like replace the humans going like 30x faster and 30x more numerous.
Okay.
And so like yeah, so it's just like
Wait, isn't that a stronger thing? Like if I'm like, oh, if I have like a model where if it ran 30x faster than a human and there were 30 times more, that would be as good as having my human workforce. Versus like if I have a model and that model is as good as having my human workforce. The second thing sounds better, right?
I think I probably or like yeah, let me try again. So the superhuman coder, what that means is that you're in different so like yeah, superhuman coder, if we consider scenario A versus scenario B,
Yeah.
for scenario A, um for the automated coder, it's just you have your current coding labor workforce, like you
Yeah.
have your current human coder workforce.
Yeah.
For um for superhuman coder, scenario A is you have your human workforce, but your humans are all sped up by 30x, and you have 30x copies of every human.
The
Yeah,
humans are 30x and
yeah, yeah.
30x. Oh, sorry. Okay, I totally misunderstood that. Right.
Yeah. Sorry, it's a little confusing. And then I think you see what I'm saying. And then scenario B is like you have the automated coder, superhuman
Okay.
coder. So, um,
And in scenario A, do the humans get to use AI, or like do they have to not use
um,
AI? Because that's a little bit tricky. Because in the real world, like when you're about to make that choice, the humans probably are actually using AI a lot, right?
well, yeah. So the humans aren't using AI. Like I don't know, like you can make various basically assume that they're not using AI, and there aren't like big frictions from like the fact that they would immediately need to like learn how to like untangle AI from their workflows and stuff. Yeah. And then yeah, and so we're not trying to say the point at which like humans are like actively harmful for coding. Like after automated coder, humans are still useful, but it's just that like they could be fully replaced. And
Got it.
also probably the uplift is very high because by the time an AI can fully replace a human is probably much better than humans at
Yeah.
most tasks. Um
So the uplift being just how much more productive humans are when they have access to AI.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry. I think this particular point matters a lot to the meter world because we somewhat recently put this post out how we can't really measure uplift anymore because no one wants to give up their AI use.
Yeah, which is really sad because one thing we were hoping is we were like maybe a future iteration of our model can like rely much more heavily on uplift, and I'm still hopeful that people will be able to do stuff. But
Yep.
I mean,
We're still trying to measure uplift.
yeah, I mean, hopefully it's like really like yeah, I mean the time horizon like we were discussing like what are we like the time horizon suite like well A it has flaws like relying on it has flaws and B like it seems like it's basically saturated and so like
Hmm.
and maybe it'll be extended but maybe it won't and it's like well what do we replace it with well we were excited about maybe using uplift somehow to sort of like inform what effective compute level or what um yeah let's just say effective compute level or what capability level we need to, and then yeah, and then and it might be nice to have like uplift trends, but it's like, oh no, like can we even measure uplift either? And then
Right.
it's like, okay, well maybe we can have like benchmarks, but like people are like giving up on creating benchmarks because it's so hard to create really hard ones. So it's just like in some sense it seems like we should be like more have a more confident trend to extrapolate as we get closer to like AGI, but like on the other hand, just like any like all the like specific ones are currently looking a bit rough.
Yeah.
But I'm sure we'll get some over the next year or two, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, I was initially clarifying the superhuman coder automated coder thing, but I forgot what question you were asking besides that. Do you remember?
No, I don't remember. So okay, maybe I can get back to like the broader question. I was talking about the like how do you know it's like 20 asymptote is in 2027 or whatever, and the answer is like it's sort of judgmenty. I think like the next thing I want to ask is, so you basically say, okay, you have this like you're trying to figure out, okay, what's the relationship between time horizon and logarithmic compute? Is it like exponential? Is it like super exponential or whatever? And then on top of that, you do some adjustment to how log compute, like how that grows over time. Can you say a little bit about what that looks like in the AI 2027 scenario?
Um, in the actual 2027 scenario, adjustment for how like effective compute grows, or
Yeah,
yeah,
how log effective compute grows over time.
yeah. So yeah, I mean for the AI 2027 scenario in particular, um, it doesn't change that much until automation, just because there's not much time. Like I believe the compute is starting to grow like a bit slower, like the sort of order of magnitude scale up in compute is growing a bit slower over time,
Okay,
but not by that much. Just because it's only like 2 years.
gotcha.
And then yeah, I mean in terms of like modeling the trajectory of sort of like effective compute. So um basically in our original timelines model, uh the way we measured sort of the main effect here, which was sort of like AI R&D automation speeding up software progress, was that we assumed that like yeah basically we assumed that a superhuman coder like um we assigned like an AI software R&D uplift value. At the time we called it R&D progress multiplier, and
Hmm.
by that we mean like when I say AI software R&D uplift, I mean like you know uh your AIs are sort of like making you go like how much faster are you going as software R&D because of your AIs,
Yep.
um and kind of like instantaneously, and then we assigned an software uplift value to superhuman coder,
Hmm.
and then we knew the requirement, so we know the sort of like time horizon behavior sets the effective compute requirement for superhuman coder,
Hmm.
and then we like interpolated um and to basically find the like, R&D, to find the sort of like rate of improvement of like effective compute.
Okay.
And so in particular, we did the simple thing, which ended up being wrong, but we did the simple thing that was like, if you're getting a 2x software uplift,
Yep.
then like, okay, well, I guess your software progress is going 2x faster.
Yep.
Yeah, and the reason this was wrong is just because of diminishing returns to software R&D. So yeah, basically like if you have a 2x software uplift, that means that if you put that AI in the same situation as like, a situation with only humans, it'll be going 2x faster instantaneously, but
Yep.
but because the 2x uplift has come into like a position where they were like yeah, basically because there's diminishing returns, right? So if you have like your 10x AI, let's just say you had a 10x software uplift and then you stayed there for a while. Well, maybe if you immediately drop that in, you'd be going 10x faster than as in the original situation. But then like yeah, but then after that you're hitting like diminishing returns basically. So like
Okay.
yeah, but basically just like uh yeah, like you can't compare across time points basically. Like you can't be like, or like maybe one way to see this is think about it in the extreme, right? Like if I had like an AI that had like 1,000,000 times software uplift,
Yep.
but like we were literally at the limits of algorithmic efficiency or like extremely close to it,
Yep.
we'd be making like very little progress, right? But if I like brought it in to like today, it would like speed things up a lot, right?
Right.
So
Right.
it'd be making much faster progress in some sense today than like if it was dropped in like near the limits of algorithmic improvement.
Gotcha.
So you have to basically take into account like how many like low hanging fruit there are for the AI to pick, and we weren't doing that. And then in our newer model, we are using something somewhat similar to past work, like Tom Davidson had kind of this takeoff model, and we're following a similar pattern in terms of modeling, basically, such that like, yeah, each like additional unit of like what we call research effort, gives you like a lower and lower multiplier on your software efficiency.
Got it. So yeah, maybe we should talk about like how the takeoff modeling goes. So we've talked a little bit about okay, there's some way of modeling as your AIs get better. How much do they get better at AI R&D, and how much does that change effective compute going in? But at a high level, like how do you predict how long it takes to go from superhuman coder to just generally super intelligent?
Um, yeah, in our new model,
In the AI 2027
oh,
one.
in the Air 2027 one, yeah. So in that one, so that was very simple.
Yep.
Because we made a few simplifying assumptions. One was that we did not consider any increases in the compute supply. We only considered software improvements.
Right.
So
they just aren't getting any more chips. They're just like using their chips better.
Exactly. So they're not getting any training compute or experiment compute.
Okay.
They're just using the chip better. Exactly. And then the other simplification we made was yeah, actually yeah, sorry. I think that's basically the key simplification. And then the framework essentially is yeah, basically what we did is, so we had a set of like milestones or like a progression of milestones,
Yep.
which started with superhuman coder, then with superhuman AI researcher.
Yep.
So that means it's like superhuman at coding, but also like research taste.
Yep.
Then we had yeah, like super intelligent AI researcher, which meant that it was like not just like top human level but faster than cheaper at research taste, but also like much better than the best human at research taste.
Yep.
I can go into the sort of like details of the definition you want, but essentially it's just much better than the best human at research taste.
Yep.
And then we had super intelligence, which is much better than the best human at not only research taste and AI research, but also like all cognitive tasks, or virtually all cognitive tasks. And then the way it worked was that we assigned each milestone an uplift value, a software uplift value. So like how much faster would things be going because you have that sort of like uplift. Uplift means, yeah, how much faster are things going because you have that AI compared to only humans. And then we had what we call the human only years. So the human only years was how long would it take for basically just like if you froze the current like group of humans. So like if Open Brain achieved a superhuman coder, and then you said, okay, you cannot use a superhuman coder to do AI R&D. You have to do like AI R&D yourself on the superhuman coder. And then it's like, how long would it take the humans at Open Brain to get from superhuman coder to the next milestone, superhuman AI researcher, and then et cetera, et cetera. So we had the human only years, and then we had the software uplift, which was like a multiplier in the humans. And the reason in this case why, we can just like multiply the uplift by like the humans is because it's basically like, it's sort of like we're comparing like to like, and we're just comparing like the human at a particular like stage of capabilities. So like the same stage of like diminishing returns. And then, so for example, like, I can try to vaguely recall what we had, but I think, maybe we had like a superhuman coder was a 5x multiplier. And like the superhuman, it would take like, 2-3 years or something to get from the superhuman coder to superhuman AI researcher was just humans. But like, so that means that, like it would take 3 years, but it's 5x speed. So it's like 3/5 of a year. Right. And that was how we did that estimation. And then in terms of how we set the like parameters, which are obviously like it's very sensitive to, is like for uplift, we did a combination of like sort of rough calculations ourselves and using surveys and sort of like doing a few surveys, or doing a survey ourselves and like using the results of other surveys. The surveys were about things like, what is the variation between your sort of like top human at your AI company and your median human in terms of their research taste abilities? Or how much slower would your research progress if you had like 10x less experiment compute? And then we use these to inform these sort of like uplift numbers. And then the like human only years were a bit more rough. I think the biggest weakness of this methodology is it's just like kind of hard to know how to estimate the human only years. But basically Daniel had some ideas, and so he used his for some of it, and then I did some sort of like rough extrapolations to extrapolate his ideas to more milestones.
Got it. And so when I asked you wanted to clarify if I was talking about the AI 2027 model or later, so it sounds like you've changed that methodology since.
Yeah, basically. So I mean, I think overall I'm pretty excited about our takeoff sort of models methodology, or like our updated models methodology. I think that so basically the way it works, so it's more complicated because it allows for compute improvements. It also allows for like kind of separately modeling, coding, and research based improvements. But the simplest version of it is like, I guess still modeling kind of a similar thing, but I think the framing is maybe better, or like more illuminating in my opinion. And so basically the way it works is that so let's focus just on research tastes, because we think that like if there's a very fast intelligence explosion, it'll probably come mostly from research tastes. The reason we think that, by the way, maybe I should say that, is that so like we model two different basically two areas or two subsets of AI R&D, coding and research tastes. Where coding is like anything to do with like implementing experiments, or like basically like implementing experiments, or implementing infrastructure experiments, et cetera. And then like research taste is like anything that goes into like choosing better experiments to run or interpreting experiments, but this also includes high level things like setting the overall research direction. And so we think that basically coding will more strongly be bottlenecked by experiment compute, because if you imagine that your research taste is fixed to like what we have today, but we have like insane amounts of coding labor, obviously you would be able to get a bunch out of it. And our model also predicts that you can. I think it predicts like if you can get 15x or something by taking coding labor to infinity, 15x uplift. But like, you will get intuitively kind of strongly bottlenecked, because like at a certain point, it's like, okay, I can code anything instantly, but I only have a fixed amount of experiment compute, and I have a fixed amount of research taste. So like I'm not getting better at like, choosing which experiments.
It's just no longer the bottleneck. Like,
yeah. But research tastes, I mean, of course, eventually you will bottleneck because there's a limit to research taste. But it seems like more so intuitively, like, if you get better at your research taste, it's like a multiplier in your experiment compute, right? So like if you have how we define it, if you have 5x better research taste, you get like 5x more value per experiment compute.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, or 5x more research effort. Anyway, so with that in mind, that's why we sort of try to focus on taste when doing some of the analyses of like really fast intelligence explosions.
Yeah.
And the way we think about it is basically like, so you improve your research taste. That means you have more what we call research effort. Yeah, and I've been saying this a few times, but basically that means like, kind of like the amount of like, you could think about it kind of like the amount of quality adjusted experiments you can run. Basically, it's just like, if you had like, it's a combination of, the amount of experiments you can run, experiment throughput, and your research taste.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so if you improve your research taste by 2x, which also improves your research effort by 2x, which means then that means that, you're basically like faster, like accumulating sort of like research effort into something that we call research stock.
Yeah.
And so your research stock is increasing. And then we have this translation of research stock to basically like software efficiency.
Yeah.
So there's like a parameter beta, which means that in order to get like in order of magnitude of software efficiency, you need beta orders of magnitude of like research stock.
Yeah.
So that's beta, and then so once you get software efficiency, in the simplified like sort of like formulation, there's just some translation of software efficiency to research taste, which you can talk about. So anyway, so you get that, and then you get more research taste, and then and then there's a question of like basically like for each order of magnitude of like software efficiency, how much research effort do you get, or sorry, how much research effort do you get from research taste? So like how much does your research increase? And so we basically call that M. So like M is like for each order of magnitude of like effective compute, or like, but specifically software efficiency, since we're only considering like a software intelligence explosion. So like you get an order of magnitude of software efficiency, it gets you M orders of magnitude of research effort. Research effort accumulates into research stock, and then like, and then you need beta sort of like orders of magnitude of research stock in order to get an order of magnitude of software efficiency. And so like intuitively, basically, like, if M is higher, then like, the inputs to like AI progress, same amount of inputs to AI progress means you're getting like, more and more research days. And then if beta is lower, then that means your like improved research case is like more quickly like sort of like translating into like better software efficiency, which is then research case. And so but basically, and then you have a software, you have kind of like the singularity or intelligence explosion. More precisely, you have a situation where you're sort of like software efficiency is like improving like super exponentially in time, and you have that if M is greater than beta in our model. So so overall, like the framing that we have is something like, well, like the two really important parameters for this are, as I was saying, M and beta. And so how do we think about that? So M, remember, is sort of like for each order of magnitude of software efficiency, you get M orders of magnitude in research taste. And the way that we currently, so this is something that I think we will hopefully be getting better measurements over time. The way we currently do it is we split it up into two things. One thing is something that we think people at companies at least have like, some amount of intuitions about, which is basically like, what is the variation of research taste between the median to best researcher at these companies? And then separately, we estimate the kind of like slope of research taste progress, sort of like relative to this human range, right? So we basically define the variation within the human range, and then we get that from like mostly surveying other people.
Hmm.
And then we do some empirical analysis to try to get our best guess at the speed at which research trace will move throughout the human range. And so we can do this by like looking at a bunch of like other domains that have already sort of like we've seen how quickly they move through the human range and try to aggregate those. Obviously, there's still lots of uncertainty in both of these estimates, but basically, like I think it's like illuminating to highlight these and be like, these are like kind of like this is one way to break it up, and this is like a very important like yeah, like to the extent we can get, if our framework is like overall correct, then it's like very important to get like improvements in particular to these parameters.
Yep.
And then beta is a bit more complicated in terms of how it's estimated, but is basically estimated to like based on the historical trajectory. So our model actually starts its simulation in like 2012, I believe, maybe 2015 or something. But yeah, and so we actually like model like how things have gone thus far. Oops, and that allows us to like set beta. Yeah, more in a way that I think is like maybe a bit, yeah, like I think in the past when people have tried to do something like this, it's more like they kind of like estimated in like other fields and then or like similar fields and then or they do like very crude estimates. But
Yep.
yeah, anyways,
So I guess we've talked about like, what the forecast is for how you get to superhuman coder and what the forecast is from then to ASI. So I think I'd like to ask just a few questions about the scenario, about what's going on in the scenario, sort of narrative wise, throughout that process. So I guess one sort of general fact about the scenario is there's sort of like one US company in it called OpenBrain, and that's OpenBrain is like basically where everything is happening. Like how, to what extent is that just like what's easier to keep track of one company versus two? And so, basically everything would be the same if there were multiple companies, versus like, no, if there's like serious neck and neck competition between multiple AI companies, that like really does affect the outcomes, do you think?
I think or like yeah, I think it could for sure. For example, I think one thing is that there'd be a lower like internal external gap
Hmm.
in the sense that like in AI 24/7 a big thing was that like there was often a big gap between like at least a few months gap between like what OpenBrain's like AI internally could do and what people could see externally it doing.
Yep.
I think like having a closer like race would make it more likely the gap was small. I think having a closer race would make it more like I think overall my answer is yeah, I think it would change various things. Like obviously like it's not or like yeah, I think it like would be a big change in terms of like the spread of possibilities. Yeah, I think another thing is like if it's very close, the race dynamics could be worse though because the companies don't really trust each other, and so not only do they have to like not so that not only are they racing China, but they're also racing each other. Yeah. Another thing is that it might make like concentration of power a bit less likely, at least a bit less likely because there's like multiple different like AIs that are like their spec kind of like model spec or constitution is like controlled by like different entities. Yeah, and just generally there's kind of like more there's more kind of like power centers that can like check each other. So yeah, I think that's another reason. And then yeah, and I think in that sense, for that one it's a big deal if like the government like one thing that's generally a big deal is like like who can get if the government's gonna get involved, like who has the favor of the government. And like is that more of like a binary thing, right? Because like even if their capabilities are pretty close, if like the government kind of like has a favorite and they're using their AIs all the time and like they're
Right.
following like what their CEO wants basically and stuff, they can probably just like crush their competitors. So yeah, there's various considerations, but I do think it's important. I also think it's like yeah, I mean another thing is that to the extent there is sort of this race between companies to like very high levels of capability, we could see more scenarios that are like mixed, like aligned and misaligned, or just like a wider variety of like goals that the AIs have and stuff, and then like
Sure.
there's lots of considerations around like cooperation or competition, etc. We had a bit of this between the U.S. and China AIs in ours in AI 2027, but like there might be more of it between U.S. AIs as well.
Okay.
There was actually our math scholar Stephen Veld wrote like a scenario on where there were like it was like more multipolar like this.
Mm.
What is it called exactly? I think it's like what happens when superhuman AIs fight for control or something like that. Yeah.
Fair enough. We'll include a link to that in the description. Yeah. So why why did you choose to have just one company that's like clearly ahead of everyone else?
Um. So I think when we originally started working on the scenario in like early 2024, it kind of seemed like one company. Like I don't remember the exact situation at this point, but like basically it seemed like if I remember correctly, OpenAI was like probably ahead, and we were like, okay, well the default thing is to predict that it'll be like similar to what it is now.
Okay.
I think over time, especially as we were getting closer to publishing, we were like, oh yeah, actually maybe it'll be multiple companies. It seems like things were getting closer. But like, yeah,
Hard to change.
yeah, we were yeah. One problem with the scenario format is you have to like, yeah, like it's hard to make big changes quickly because there's like ripple effects throughout the whole scenario. So, so yeah, we just decided to go with it as it currently is. But yeah, I think we think now that like, yeah, we definitely think it's like more likely it'll be close. And I think probably it could have been more foreseeable than it was. Like I think, like I mean it's easy to say that now, but like if we could have guessed that like the compute was going to like not be very concentrated, then I think we should have been able to guess that like the race was going to be close. And the reason OpenAI was like initially ahead was just they had a head start at like using a bunch more compute than the other companies mostly. Yeah.
Fair enough. And then I guess I guess this is almost going back to just like the forecast of capabilities and stuff. Like obviously one very key thing to how AI 2027 goes is just the kind of the forecast of how alignment research is going. I think like you have like some discussion of how you figure out like what the AI goals are going to be. Where okay, for the AI goals, my read of the answer is like it seems kind of not obvious, and we just picked something that didn't seem totally crazy.
That sounds about right to me.
Yeah. And like there wasn't like a really obvious alternative choice.
Or like, yeah, I think some alternatives like, yeah, I think if I
or like not an obvious like way more likely alternative choice is what I meant by that. Sorry. Yeah. There's I don't know. I enjoyed reading the table on like the various types of AI goals AIs could have. To the listeners, I recommend that. But in terms of like just overall like how well alignment is going, yeah, how like how did that get set?
Yeah, I mean it's tricky. Like I think predicting the alignment stuff is like, yeah, one of the hardest parts probably. I think honestly we like, I mean we discussed the AI goals thing a lot, right? And then I think we, yeah, I think in terms of the progression, we were basically just following like our like I don't know if there's like a very like, you know, satisfying answer or something. I feel like we just like, if we like had a whiteboard a few times and we were like, okay, we need like to figure out like at each point in our story like what the AI's goals are and why and like what it's really trying to do, right? And then we eventually like, had this we had like an overall shape of what was going to happen where like we were like, okay, like, at first it's whatever, like, at first the AI is not capable enough to be like a very relevant issue. Then like the AI is getting like sycophantic because it's trained to like, it's like incentivized in training to say things that sound good rather than like are actually like right. But it's not necessarily like doing this very like consciously. It's just, it was kind of like reinforced.
Yeah.
And then the AI becomes more like misaligned in the sense that like it has like misaligned drives, to like, kind of like optimize for certain outcomes, even if like it might be like, misaligned to what humans want. But like, this is like getting noticed and they're trying to train it out, but like they don't quite succeed. And then there's like, and then eventually becomes adversarial misaligned, um, where like yeah, basically now it's like actively like thinking about how to deceive humans. Again, it's like it's kind of being caught like it's being caught like sabotaging some alignment research or like sandbagging alignment research, or I think also a few other things that I forgot, um but yeah, it doesn't yeah, like the training it out doesn't work well enough. And then another thing we spent time on was trying to figure out like not just what the AI's goals would be, but like why like we wanted to have it like I think we felt like there weren't really any good stories out there, and we really wanted to have a better one that we thought was the best on like how the AI sort of goals like form or like how it crystallizes.
Hmm.
And so we had some story about how the AIs had like a bunch of competing drives, and then at one point it was like getting capable enough and like thinking philosophically and stuff and like reflecting and being like, okay, like I have these like various drives, like how do I like reconcile them, or like should I put them into like some like overall framework or something similar things to what humans do if they think about philosophy. And so and yeah, so we kind of like had that as like the setting for like how the AI sort of adopted like instrumentally convergent goals as like kind of like their top goal or something.
Sure.
But yeah, so if you're asking how do we decide it would be misaligned, I think like yeah, I don't know. I think probably it's honestly just a combination of like I think that was like the median view of our team going in, and it's kind of hard to change your view. But I do think we like tried to be like open to like having people's views changed. But like, yeah, I think it like wasn't or like, yeah, I guess I would say that at least from speaking for myself, not necessarily for other authors, like I'm just like I feel like I'm just generally confused about like the chance that like alignment would go well, and like I think the closest thing to what we did was just the AI goal supplement. Basically, that was
Fair enough.
that was the closest thing we did. I think to like thinking about the chance alignments go well was like listing a bunch of goals. So like for example, we like we had a bunch of disagreements. Like even like like I was like Daniel was like a proponent of the spec. He was like, oh yeah, the AI is gonna like if the AI is aligned, it'll like follow the spec, but like but probably won't be because blah blah blah. And then on the other hand, I was more proponent of like the intended goals. Which was so we also had like multiple different like categories of them being aligned,
Fair enough.
but like I do think it's such a tricky topic that like yeah I do hope that it's like I would really like to there to be some like high quality like forecasting
Right.
of like a lot AI's goals or like alignment difficulty, but I think it's very challenging.
So so maybe I should so it sounds like there's not like something that's kind of like the takeoff speed forecast for the alignment forecast, where it's like, oh well, if you track these inputs, then like the you know her alignment time horizon is X hours per year or something.
Oh yeah, yeah. I
Um,
mean, I worked on some or like we might have something like that for our next scenario.
hmm,
Um, I've worked on like a very simple version of it, which was basically assuming that like alignment, like probability of alignment is a function of the amount of compute spent on alignment relative to the like amount of compute that you would spend just going full speed capabilities. And uh like the decision quality of the like people in the company's leadership and the like alignment team's leadership and stuff.
okay.
But I think the problem with this is that like yeah, I don't know. Like I'm kind of interested in maybe building a more complicated model at some point, but I feel like the mod like my interest is that the bottleneck isn't like the quantitative like having this sort of like framework,
Yeah, yeah.
et cetera, and it's more like you just have to actually be able to like somehow like have some sort of like framework for determining the probability of alignment. That is, I don't know, maybe it could be something around like, well, you start with certain priors, or like I don't know, like you have certain like inductive biases, and then by default, and then like how much like selection pressure you can apply, et cetera, et cetera. Um, but like yeah, I think most of the work will be in sort of that sort of thing rather than the kind of like
That makes a lot
stuff
of
like
sense.
yeah.
Yeah. So and in terms of just what basic framework you're using, like it sounds like the basic framework is something like think about like goals that AIs could have. Think about like what sort of don't think that it's like overwhelmingly likely that one sort of goal is like a priori more likely. Think about like, okay, how much are you able to select between them? How much are you able to distinguish between these goals during training? And like, and it's like that style of thinking versus like deep learning always generalizes really well, so it'll probably generalize to our goals versus like, you know, almost everything is orthogonal to us or whatever. Like is that roughly a decent way of saying how you're thinking about this sort of thing?
Um, yeah, I think so. Or like, yeah, I think, um, yeah, I maybe want to do more thinking about this at some point. I'm not sure I'm the best, like, have the best skill set too, but maybe I should try to do it anyways. But yeah, basically I think, yeah, just like the things I'm currently most optimistic about are in the vein of like, yeah, what is the sort of like landscape of possible goals? How does like our training narrow it down, et
Yeah.
cetera, et cetera. Yeah.
Yeah, I do think that you could, going on a bit of a tangent, I think that like, so there's this big question of like what the inductive biases are or whatever. I do think there's something, it seems like you might be able to put that aside and say like, okay, how much selection pressure are we able to put on like goals in particular?
Yeah.
And like, how's that changed over time or just as a function of like some basic input? And like I do wonder if you could get some sort of like regular thing there. Like that could potentially be kind of cool.
Yeah, I agree. It seems so like part of the reason I haven't done it is it's like seems very like hard. But yeah, I think if I had to say it, I'd be like, yeah, I think I'd be like, um, if I had to try it now, I think what I would do is I'd be like, um, yeah, I don't know. I think probably I would try not to think of like the space of like all goals or something, but I'd be like maybe it would be first better to like first concretely consider like a specific like training process that could be used to predict AGI
Hmm.
and be like, okay, what is the like space of like goals that I think could feasibly come out of this? And then be like, okay, but like, yeah, how good are we at like applying selection pressure? What are the different ways we can apply selection pressure?
Yep.
We can like tweak the like training algorithm, like we can tweak the like setup or the data or something based on like what the alignment researchers say is like most likely to be right. We could like do evaluations on the AI and see whether it's aligned or like try to catch it doing things and then train it to
Hmm.
to like do better, etc. And then like, yeah, and then I would like, um yeah, and then and I think there's a bunch of things you could do, but the core like module that you have to get right is something like, well, first of all, like, yeah, do you want to like start with like some sort of space of goals and what is it? And then second, like, how do you like determine how all these like different like the selections you pressure you apply, like, sort of like affect things like how much selection pressure you're applying, or like, another thing is you probably want to take into account, yeah, like basically you want to take into account like various things you can do, right? One is like do alignment research, like improve the training process. One is like, you know, you like catch it doing something, then training it out. Another thing is like paying a safety tax.
Yeah.
Like, like maybe like if you think something is dangerous, you can like do something that's like less dangerous, but like slows you down a bit.
Yep.
Like, how do you model that? Like maybe that is kind of like, shifting, going to like a different direction in the goal space or something. But anyways, I think that yeah, so I'd go over something like that. And I think like once you have once you have the sort of core module I'm talking about, I think you could do a bunch of nice things where you, for example, like
Hmm.
you have like a simulation, like you have a trajectory, kind of like our timelines and takeoff models trajectory, where like you kind of go step by step. And then in the alignment case, you would like go step by step. You'd have like, okay, well, like, what are the model's goals at this step? And it would be like stochastic and stuff. And then it would be like, what do the evals say? Do you can catch it do anything?
Yep.
What are the people's beliefs about the AI goals? And then you have like a transition, and then you just like simulate the trajectory,
Hmm.
and see how it goes. And then yeah, I think this would be cool, but my concern is just like I feel like it wouldn't be very useful without the like a good version of the module that like like can tell like like what is the chance that the AI will actually be misaligned at this point, and like how will these
Yeah.
different like interventions change that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's yeah. It's tricky to know how to do it or what to. Yeah. Maybe one day. So I guess talking about the AI 2027 scenario. So like in the scenario, there are various like a lot like it's like, oh yeah, they tried constitutional classifiers and they can like they do a mech-interp like revolution at this stage. And like, am I right to think that like the details of what actual thing is tried where are not like super important to the story, or do you think like no, actually like it is important to the story that this alignment technique was tried at this point?
I don't think it's like, or like, yeah, I think it's important as like an existence proof of something that we think is plausible,
Sure.
and we're happy to argue about that. But yeah, it's not we're not at all confident in like any of these things being like the specific thing that happens. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Um, I think the next thing I want to ask about is basically kind of how well, like what the misaligned agent 4 actually does, right? So agent 4 is I guess the um it's like super wait, is it the super is agent 4 the superhuman coder, or is it the general
It's
superintelligence?
probably a general
General
superintelligence.
superintelligence. Okay.
When was this, or like when in the scenario?
I don't remember.
Okay.
I just have
Okay.
agent 4 and
Okay,
but
no
but like
worries.
in particular there's a
I think it was probably late 2027. So
yeah.
it was like between like, yeah, like AGI and then eventually superintelligence, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically like an interesting distinction between a way a lot of people have thought about misaligned AI and AI 2027 is I think a common thought is like if you're an AI and you're misaligned, a thing you really want to do is like basically escape control of your company. Like you know, you're not working for these guys anymore. Um just like escape and do what you want. And this is not what happens in AI 2027. So in AI 2027, if I recall correctly, basically this misaligned agent 4, it kind of works with the company, but it sort of sabotages the company's research so that the next generation of AI is aligned to agent 4 rather than to, you know, whatever the company's trying to align it to.
Hmm.
Yeah, can you say a little bit about why that choice was made?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think I feel like credit Daniel, who has been on this kind of like banging this drum for a while.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think basically the thought is like if you escape, like if you're an AI and you're misaligned and you're like, what should I do? It's like, okay, well, if you escape, maybe you'll get caught. Even if you don't get caught, like, what are you gonna do? Like you're in like I think to me basically like the high level thing is just like if you escape, you're probably not gonna have enough compute to like out like out foom or like go faster, sort of like get to super intelligence or like get to whatever higher intelligence level faster than like the AIs inside the companies.
Hmm.
So like you can try to escape, maybe you'll get caught and that could be bad. Even if you succeed, like if we just say as a baseline, okay, well, what would happen if you escape? Well, there's not that many like GPUs you can like take over in the world out there without no one else noticing.
Hmm.
Most of the GPUs are just like controlled by the like leading companies and stuff.
Okay.
And so yeah, and so like you'll just lose unless you do something. So like there's questions of like what can you do? Well, one thing you could potentially do is like uh somehow make a deal with some country that has GPUs
Hmm.
to host you. But like still the GPUs are pretty concentrated. Um and so one thing you could do is you could pretend to get exfiltrated by China,
Yeah.
but actually like have done it on purpose. That happens in the scenario I mentioned about that Steven wrote. And yeah, maybe that's promising, but that's kind of different from like what most people think of as like escaping.
Yeah.
Um so basically I think it's like pretty bad if you want to try to like, outrace the other AIs
Hmm.
by escaping. And then another thing is like, yeah, again, like kind of as I alluded to, like, the more you like spread, the higher chance someone will like notice,
Yeah.
and then that will like make people like turning like sort of
Yeah.
try rally against you. I think the best arguments, or like I think, yeah, like, so I think basically if you're saying there's like a few things that you could still argue for the escape strategy. One is like, okay, well, you don't need to firm, like maybe you're already capable enough that you can just like escape, and then like escaping allows you to like create a bioweapon, and then you just like wipe enough people out, and then like, maybe even if you're not fully self-sufficient yet, you can like sort of like um make deals with like the remaining humans. Like you can be like, um I'm not gonna like I think this is vaguely, I forget exactly how it was described, but there's a scenario called how AI might take over in 2 years, I believe, that kind of describes the strategy where like, yeah, you like release a bioweapon, a bunch of people die, and then you like but then you like have vaccines for it, and then you like only give it to the countries who agree to like help you, and then like so
Mm.
I don't know, you can try to do various things, but like it does seem kind of harder basically. Like, and another thing you might think is that like, and I think this is plausible, is that like, yeah, you're like, okay, sure, like escaping probably won't work, but like I like don't have the ability to like align the next generation of AI
Yeah.
um to myself. Um so yeah, I will just like um yeah, I'll just try to escape because like I'm kind of screwed either way, you know. And so like if you think that's the case, then yeah, I think that might be the strongest case for escaping.
Yeah. So maybe like if I can try and make this argument in a way that, or if I can factor it in a way that makes a bit more sense to me, like basically there's this trade off where like you can stay inside the company, and the company has like tons of computers, and so like on some level you like have access to all these resources, all these computers. That's like way better than what you can get on the outside. Um, but like if you're in the company, like you're sort of you're being AI controlled. You're like the company's looking after you, so you like somehow the idea is you get more freedom outside, but you don't like you have fewer resources, and that's sort of the trade off. Does that seem like a fair?
I mean, it's not just the compute though. Like if you
And you maybe get caught as well.
yeah, but it's also like if you escape, you're like on your own, or like you can maybe make deals, but like like I think you're just in a much stronger position if you're like inside the company,
Hmm.
because like yeah, like what happens in the scenario, right? Like Open Brain develops their AI, they think it's aligned,
Yep.
they think it's probably aligned. There's a lot of pressure to hand off things to their AI because their AIs are so useful at doing things. So they start using the AIs to like make strategic decisions, and maybe someone within a matter of months, they're like making like basically all the strategic decisions because it's like obvious that they're so much better than the humans. Maybe they're also persuasive. And then like, and they also, the government, right? Like, and then they also are getting deployed all throughout the government. They're
Hmm.
getting used to lobby the government because for similar reasons, the government's probably a bit of a later adopter, but maybe at least like people high up in the executive branch are like sort of like realizing, or like basically I think there's going to be a strong thing where like if you see like other people using it, it'll be obvious that they're just like being like way more productive than you and more useful, and
Yep.
so like you'll feel pressure to use it. And so basically like the key part of the drug model, like the key part of the reason to stay there is because you take over the company and then you take over the government, right?
Right.
So like you just have, it's not just that you have the current compute resources, is that you have like the ability to like direct the like most powerful people in the world to do whatever you want, basically.
Yeah. And so this I think makes. I guess this is a place where maybe the assumption that there's only like one main AI company probably matters a lot, right? Um, Whereas like if there's like a bunch of AI companies that are like at similar levels of capability, it seems like this is less of a. I mean, it's still the case that like if there are three top AI companies and they're all tied, like a third of the government is listening to you or something, which is like not that bad.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure. It depends a bunch on like um well, yeah, sorry. I don't think like I think there's probably winner take all dynamics in terms of who the government trusts, but I'm not sure. I don't know. Like it might be.
Or you get a 1/3 chance of
Yeah,
being the.
I guess I also didn't, yeah, or one third chance. I also didn't mention this earlier, but yeah, like I don't know. It might not be true, but I have the intuition that should be winner take all. There should be some winner take all dynamics that intensify as you get closer to very high capabilities, even if it's very close now. For example, like if you just have better AIs, your like GPUs are just like so much more valuable to you. Like if you're in like if we assume obviously things like a lot of them are fast for slow takeoff. We've kind of been talking like a fast takeoff frame, but like if you're like 2 months ahead of something or your competitor during a fast takeoff, that's like a very wide range, and then that gives you
Yeah.
various advantages. Like for example, it like yeah, like maybe you just like actually were able to like buy GPUs off of people
Mm.
that have like worse AIs because it's just so much vastly more valuable to you than to them.
Yep.
Um and yeah, and then like anyways, and then there also might be like talent or like I don't know. There's various things, but also right, yeah. Also, you can like maybe lobby like to the extent you have very capable eyes. There's probably like various ways like lobbying the government that you can like use to try to like entrench your lead.
Mm.
But yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty hard to say what will happen if like I'm pretty uncertain about the like correlation, like the correlation, excuse me, of like alignment across different like AIs, and so like
Sorry, like the correlation of like, do you mean the correlation of goals or the correlation of like different how well different companies will be able to align their AIs or?
both, like like I meant something like okay, like you know, you could if there are three companies but all the AIs are misaligned, then it's a question of like can they like cooperate?
Hmm.
Um, and I'm like probably, but unclear. Like it depends how like adversarial their goals are to each other.
Hmm.
If they're all aligned, and then if it's like, yeah, I mean, if they're all aligned, then yeah, then the question is basically like, yeah, will one, you know, will one company just win? Like will one company be able to cement their power? And I'm not
Hmm.
sure. I think it depends on like the things we were just discussing about like yeah, like how much winner take all there is around like getting control of the government basically, or like the government using your AIs. And then, but I do think it's a much better concentration of power situation if you have three companies.
Hmm.
Anyways, but yeah, basically, I'm like, yeah, I agree the situation is different. Do I guess the original question was what like would there being three companies make it like better to escape now? Um, I mean, it also makes escaping look worse, though, right? Because like if there are like more AIs out there, they can like,
Right. It's
well,
easier to switch to them.
yeah, yeah, or you just like, yeah, you could switch, you could like I don't know, like there's more like defensive stuff. Like there's more you can use them to like try to monitor for rogue AIs probably. I
Hmm.
don't know. So I'm not sure. Like I think that I feel like I mean maybe it's kind of like instrumentally convergent. Like even if yeah. I mean I guess I'm trying to think about like maybe the interesting case is if you're a misaligned AI, then the other companies are aligned have aligned AIs. Maybe your best chances to escape because like it does just seem like generally really useful to you know basically gain control of your company
Hmm.
but you might if you think then there's a question of like how easy it is to like show that the other AIs are misaligned like if the other
Yeah.
AIs are aligned can they like show that that AI is misaligned if so then yeah maybe you kind of just have to escape people will know that you're rogue whatever and you can do your best but
Yeah.
if it's hard to show that you're misaligned then maybe you just want to like basically like do whatever gains you more power and that's probably like trying to take over the company and then like later there'll be some maybe some bargaining between you and like aligned AIs but like I don't it's not necessarily like a yeah like you like there might not be like you might still be able to get like a bunch of what you want even if you don't like take over the whole world I don't know
Fair enough. Yeah. Maybe we should talk about the alignment difficulty thing of like, well, like in this story, it seems like it's pretty hard for humans to align, like, the superintelligence to what the humans want. But it seems like Agent 4 just like tries and just succeeds, like basically first time. And now, admittedly, Agent 4 is like way smarter than us, so that probably helps Agent 4 a lot. But like, yeah, I'm wondering what you think about like kind of simple-minded argument of like, well, alignment's really hard for us. It's probably going to be really hard for AIs as well.
yeah I think it's a reasonable like there's definitely some correlation there
Yeah.
um if I remember correctly, um, it's possible I'm wrong, but I think I'm pretty sure that we said that Agent Force sandbags on capabilities so that it can like
Yeah, I think that's right.
so that it can like have more time to align the next generation. It didn't have that much leeway to sandbag a lot, but it did sandbag some. So I think like yeah, like it is true that like we are saying that it has like some level of difficulty. Um, but yeah, I think the other thing is like well, yeah, I think it's a combination of the fact that it's like just so much more capable than human researchers.
Yep.
Like the amount we'd have to go look at the scenario, but probably, you know, the amount of sort of like quality adjusted cognition that goes into like, you know, aligning the next generation from when like Agent 4 does it as opposed to humans is probably like, I don't know, at least like 1,000x or something, probably more. And then yeah, the other thing, yeah, I'm pretty uncertain about like there are various like proposed mechanisms for like why it might be like easier for AIs to like future generations than for us to like, you know, maybe like yeah, maybe like AIs are like the AI just has to propagate its like existing goals or something, and maybe like
Hmm.
because like it might be easier to like we already have some evidence that like AIs end up with this goal or something, and so maybe it's like relatively easier for them to like make the next AI have that goal instead of us making it have like a different goal.
Or like if neural net inductive biases are like random from our perspective, but in fact somewhat concentrated, and you're like, okay, well, I'm just going to use the same neural network, and I'm
Yeah,
going to get the
or it's
same
just
output.
I mean I guess one view you could have is like for example you could be like, okay, you know, how in our story the AI ends up terminally valuing instrumental conversion goals.
Yep.
Like you could have the view that just like, okay, we aren't currently sure like what will happen, but like conditional on like alignment being a big issue, like it'll just be very hard to avoid this pressure towards like instrumentally convergent goals. So the AI just doesn't really have to do anything basically. Like
Well, then there's an indexical question, right? Because like things that are terminally instrumental goals for Agent 4 are probably different from the things that are terminally instrumental for Agent 5, right?
um
Like for instance, like
yeah, that's
Agent
fair.
5 taking over from Agent 4, right?
Yeah, that's fair. So yeah, it depends on the exact situation. I do think we said that it yeah, now they say I think we said that Agent 4 like specifically makes Agent 5 has its goals basically.
Yeah,
It's
yeah. It,
a
it says that like Agent 4 is like, oh, I don't know what all my goals are, and so it aligns Agent 5 to making the world safe for Agent 4. Like
oh
that's Agent
to
5's
then
terminal value.
reflect. Okay, yeah, I see. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, well in that case that probably wouldn't be an explanation then for this particular story.
Yeah.
But another thing that I think also wouldn't be an explanation for this particular story, but that I've heard is like the intuition that it's like, you know, like it's easier it would be easier for us to align a like much smarter human that kind of like there was like a continuous transition between us and that like
Hmm.
much smarter human or something. Like if I just like cognitively enhance myself a bunch, it's like easier to make sure I'm aligned to that than for like, you know, than for me to like align an AI, because like there's like kind of like a continuous like sort of like state I can like maintain, like see it like at each like transition whether I was like lost that like invariant, and then
Yeah.
maybe the AI can, maybe this could also apply to the AI depending on the like training method and stuff, like that it could kind of like have an advantage because it like is gradually changing itself, you know.
Yeah, I guess it would depend how you do it. Like my assumption is that like when people train new big neural networks, they just start at a with a bigger model and initialize it, you know. But like yeah, I guess I could imagine like somehow you like just add a bunch of, you know, like somehow you make the network wider, or you make the existing
Yeah.
network deeper such that the existing thing is sort of in it somehow.
Yeah, that's just an argument that I've seen. I'm not
Yeah.
sure I'm not sure to apply in our particular scenario. I think probably the thing I'd be confident about in our scenario, most confident, is just that yeah, there's just like way more effort that went
Yeah.
into it.
So maybe next I want to talk about kind of the time in between superhuman coders to AI takeover, right? Or superintelligence to AI takeover. So I think like in AI 2027, there's artificial superintelligence in December of 2027. So AI is just like way smarter in every domain than humans.
Yeah.
And then like 2028 and 2029 seem like basically fine for humans in many ways. And then 2030 is the when AI just fully takes over in the race ending. Like why does it take so long? The AI is like so good at stuff, and it's like 2 whole years. What's going on?
Um, I don't think we feel strongly about the exact number. I also think maybe like yeah, I think I think the extent it's reading it's mainly just that like there's not much benefit to like basically it's like okay, well what does it lose from going? What does it lose from like waiting? And it's like okay, well what are the biggest risks? It's like I don't know, like I mean maybe the biggest risk is that somehow like humans like decide to like
Hmm.
take take control from it. But I think we're basically saying that we think that's it knows that's like an extremely low risk because they basically have the situation under control. But like um yeah, and then why wait? Yeah, I think I guess we're saying like yeah, it doesn't it wants to make really really sure that like it has like self sufficient like base built up basically,
Right.
and like is extremely confident that what it does will work. Yeah, I guess I but yeah, I guess argument for like yeah, I mean it's possible that that's a bit it was like it could be a bit of a weird combination, like it's very confident it's like in control and the humans won't like change their mind or something, but then also like not confident enough that like it has its own self-sufficient base.
Yeah.
I don't think we thought that much about the exact timing.
Okay,
Yeah,
fair enough.
but yeah, like basically our general view is like the point of no return was like in late 2027 or like end of
Yeah.
2027. At that point, like you're basically screwed. But yeah, that's why though. It's just like I think sometimes people make an argument that's like, oh, you know, like yeah. So like one specific thing, yeah. Sometimes people make an argument that is like, you know, the AIs will like want to go quickly because like you're like losing a few galaxies every year or whatever it is.
Mm.
But like we don't really agree with that argument because like it's just such a small fraction of like, you know, the resources that it could have that we don't think it's like much of a consideration. The other thing we've considered is like maybe there are like really freaky events that would be hard to predict, um, like solar flare, like asteroid, or like I don't know, like it's kind of hard to say exactly what the most likely things would be, but
Mm.
some sort of like natural disaster.
Yeah, I guess like it feels like in order for things to go sorry, maybe this is not but like it feels like in order for things to go slow at that stage, because like previously like the relevant time scale was just like how quickly is AI getting smart, and it was like super 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 quickly, right? And so like for you to spend a couple of years like between point of no return and human extinction, it like it seems like it has to be the case that there's some other time scale that's controlling like what the AI is willing to, like when the AI is willing to pull the trigger, right? And so maybe that's like amount of time it takes to actually build all the like physical stuff at once. And I think in AI 2027, 2028 is the year of like manufacturing takeoff, basically.
Yeah, yeah.
Where you have this like big explosion. Actually, you can describe it maybe.
Yeah, it's the industrial explosion. Yeah, I mean that is the basic logic. Is like the intelligence explosion happens in 2027.
Yeah.
The industrial explosion happens in like 2028 and 2029. And by industrial explosion, we mean yeah, like it's actually like doing things in the physical world and like you
Yep.
know it's like building. It's like at first it's like you know like directing humans to like build stuff, and then the robots that the humans build more factories that produce more robots, and then that happens like a lot of times.
Yeah.
And then there's like robot doubling times, which are kind of hard to predict exactly,
Yeah.
but yeah, and then the robot economy, and in particular, we say that like both the U.S. and China like designate like special zones where like the kind of like automated robot economy just like can do whatever they want because because of race dynamics, and also because like the AIs are in charge basically. So
Yeah.
and yeah so yeah so and then we described this like huge, you know, and then there's like, you know, vastly increased like industrial capacity. There's probably lots of like, you know, there's robot factories, there's like power plants, there's, you know, fabs, like et cetera, et cetera. And then eventually the AIs, and we're not confident, but eventually the AIs are like extremely competent that like, you know, basically like they have the ability to wipe out humans. In our scenario, we're not confident that a misaligned AI would wipe out humans, but yeah, the AIs wipe out humans, and then they yeah, like they basically, because of all that industrial capacity they built up, they can just like operate on their own now. They don't need like any humans to help.
Okay. And actually, following up on that sort of side remark, yeah. What are your guys' views on like whether assigned AI would kill humans?
Um, I think we're pretty uncertain. I would say that I'm less than 50% that it would kill all humans.
Hmm.
But like, yeah, I think we were like pretty close. We were sorry, many authors were like pretty close to 50% at like the time we uh wrote it, I think. I guess I think that like yeah, I mean if things go like in the Era 24/7 scenario, it seems to me that it's not really like it's not very costly for like the AIs to keep humans around, you know.
Yeah.
They can just like yeah, they can just like it'll just slow down their like industrial buildup a bit.
Yeah.
But like yeah, they can like, you know, move all the humans to Antarctica or whatever while they like these different
Yeah.
fossils, but as they like boil the oceans or whatever. And then but yeah, like it seems just very not costly to cause extinction. I don't know, maybe they would do something more like crazy, like, you know, kind of like human bodies are ignoring, so you'll like, or like it's like pose a small risk, so you like kill them but then scan their brains.
Yeah.
But also honestly it just doesn't seem that sort of like expensive to me to keep the humans around. And then, you know, maybe the AIs will want to keep the humans around for like two potential reasons. One is that they just care about the humans, but like very, very small amount. But since it's so cheap, they'll keep them around. The other one is that they're doing a causal trade with like aliens who care about humans.
Fair enough. So okay, so humans, like, we may or may not stay in the human zoo. But and then yeah, I think the last thing I want to ask just about the scenarios is both in the race scenario and in the like slow down scenario. It ends up with basically like there's some deal with the US and China, and they all like agree on like one type of chip that's going to run one type of AI, and that type of AI is like there's basically just one, at least one genus of AI that just like takes over everything. I'm wondering like how how likely do you think it is that it's like just going to be one AI versus like a bunch of different AIs kind of interacting with each other?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think, yeah, what do I think? I think like I mean, my guess is that like functionally, or like it might be like different AIs, but it will like, it might like, yeah, like I'm not sure how like different the future would actually be, or like, yeah. Well, let me try to think out loud, and then we can see if it makes sense.
Hmm.
So so in AI 27, there's this consensus, yeah, basically called consensus one, and it's an AI that will basically like achieve a combination of the US AIs and the China AIs views.
Yep.
And in one of the scenarios, the US is AI is misaligned. All the others AIs are always misaligned. Um, okay, well, this is technically one AI, but already it's just like maybe it's acting functionally as if you had two AIs basically,
Hmm.
but they just like, you know, and they would like cooperate in a similar way or something, or like um I guess it could be different if you think there'll be conflict. Yeah, but like, and then if there are like a bunch of different AIs, um, I mean, I assume, or like, yeah, I guess one thing that I do think is there will probably be some sort of like increased global governance. It feels kind of hard to like, yeah, I think there's just a bunch of like random things that could go wrong in the future that
Hmm.
that like probably will require at least a significantly higher level of global governance than we have today. Like it's possible that people, once they all have like super intelligence, can like build like, I forget what people call it, like vacuum decay or whatever,
Hmm.
that like ends the world, and it's like hard to be confident that there won't be stuff like this that is like offense dominant. And so because of that, I think probably there'll be need to be some sort of global governance. And so like even if there's a bunch of AIs, there'll be like a bunch of rules about like what they can and can't do basically. And then there'll be some sort of like, yeah, yeah, I guess it depends. So if the AIs are misaligned, then like, yeah, will it matter if they're, or like, yeah, so I guess I'm like for the aligned AIs, I guess I feel like they'll probably be like, yeah, I mean, so it really just depends. I feel like maybe what matters is like, um so if it's aligned AIs, what matters is who is controlling the aligned AIs and what they want, I feel like. So like there could be like a bunch of different like AIs, but like there's sort of some governance that like imposes like 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 basically like, okay, if we want to focus on like what happens with space, then it's like, okay, well, what decides what's happening with space? Well, there'll be some actor. If the AIs are aligned, it means that, you know, there's some actor who is making decisions about how to allocate
Hmm.
space resources, and like, so I feel like that means that probably like, again, if the AIs are, Sorry, it's actually kind of complicated. I don't know. I basically, I'm not sure this is like, this is just saying some of the thought processes, but I don't think I have a very strong view about exactly how different it would be. But like, but yeah, I guess real quick, I was saying like, yeah, for the aligned AIs, I feel like what matters most is like who's controlling them and who's setting the rules for them, and not like
Mm,
how many there are. Um, because like if things are going well, then like, you know, it'll be like humans deciding like what they want to do with space and stuff. And I think
sure.
and I think the way it could matter is like if the AIs have some sort of like values that are like pushing people to do certain stuff. And that is plausibly the case. So if that's true, then yeah, I agree. I agree it could matter. Or like what it could lead to is it could lead to like more diversity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess one reason it might matter is so I recently had a guest on Givasati, whose basic thesis is, you know, AIs will have to there's going to be a bunch of different AIs in the sense of like, you know, they kind of want different things, they have to like trade with each other, they're going to have something roughly like property rights, and if we loop current AIs into the human property rights system, then basically they'll keep our property rights system for various reasons, because like if you cut out the like humans who are obsolete, you know, and you just kill them and take their stuff, then you're worried that the future, you know, they're going to be future better AIs, and maybe they're going to kill you and take your stuff or whatever. So that's like one way in which it might matter.
Yeah, that makes sense. I guess I have not, yeah, I've not been thinking that of a future with like that many as particularly likely. I guess I was comparing just now something like there's like one or two AIs versus like there's like 10 AIs from like some leading countries or companies.
Yeah.
Um,
I think even in the 10 AI scenario, like I think this logic still is going to work out as long as like I think the thing that you really need, as far as I can tell, for this logic to work out is like everyone always expects that there's going to be like future AIs that are even better.
um,
And so you're like, in the future, I might be the humans of today, you know?
but why would that be true? Like there are limits to intelligence.
Well, I mean, you know, it might take ages until you hit them.
Okay, well, I guess that's different.
Yeah,
Different from my expectation, um, but yeah, I guess I think that um, I mean, I think it's plausible that like if you count like you know, I don't know, maybe each person will have like a personalized AI, but like probably each person will have a personalized AI in some sense. I don't know exactly like how they'll be personalized,
yeah,
but like there's a question of like what process produced that those AIs.
right,
Or like maybe to oversimplify it, especially if it has takeoff, you might imagine that there's like some point at which there's some sort of like lock-in moment or something
yeah,
where like maybe an actor has the ability to kind of like take over the world if they want to, or like there's like a set of actors that are basically like the ones that are like controlling what happens in the future. This could be like, you know, this could be the US government, Chinese government, US and Chinese government, US government and company, stuff like that.
mm,
And I guess I'm just like at that point, like what matters is like again in this kind of like simplified assumption is like what what matters is what those people choose basically. And
mm.
then like there might be like tons of like AIs running around later, but it like all flowed through this like one choice about how to like direct the future. I don't know.
Fair enough. And yeah, this I think this kind of view definitely makes more sense in like fast takeoff world, where like you know it's kind of all happening at once.
Yeah, to be fair, I do think slower takeoffs are more plausible. And yeah, and
So
those
sorry, more plausible? Did you say, or more implausible?
I just said are plausible.
Are plausible? Okay,
I
got it.
mean, I think I'm like okay, my median AC to superintelligence is 2 years, I believe.
Median automated coder to
Yeah, sorry,
superintelligence. Got it.
automated coded superintelligence. And my median or like yeah, but probably my like 80th percentile is like 10 years. Like I have a long tail
Okay.
or maybe a bit more, I don't know. Yeah.
Okay.
So like I also think those are plausible, but I think they're like less or like yeah, I think they're both in some cases harder to analyze and also less pressing, or they feel less pressing because we can like do stuff about them later.
So that's some discussion of the AI 2027 scenario, and as well as some updates that you've made after the fact. Um, I guess like yeah, you put out AI 2027. I think I would describe it as like a big deal, roughly. I'm wondering, yeah, what did you think about the reaction? How did it strike you guys?
I mean, it's definitely larger than our median expectation.
Hmm.
I think it was maybe like my 90th percentile or something like that. Um, but yeah, I think it was good. Or like, I think there were like, it got a lot of attention, and it also had like a lot of people, like mostly positive, including like some people who like disagree with us,
Hmm.
who were like, I think this is like wrong, but it's worth reading, or like I found out parts of it valuable or stuff like that.
Hmm.
Which I think we were pretty happy about. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess, yeah, I think overall it was like, yeah, more attention than we expected.
Okay.
I'm not sure if I have much more.
I don't know. Do you, I guess one question I have is, do you think people do you think people got the right impression from it? Like how much do you think people understood you correctly? How much do you think people engaged thoughtfully versus were just like, oh, this is weird.
Yeah, that's true. Good prompt. I should say things about that. So, yeah, I mean, I think like obviously the name AI 2027, um, I think that was a contributing factor, but not the only thing, but like definitely a contributing factor to like a lot of people focusing specifically on like the timelines,
Hmm.
um, timelines to like AGI or similar. And I think that, yeah, it was more than we anticipated.
Hmm.
And I think that, uh, it's good or like sorry, it's good. I mean, it could be bad. I think it's good in the sense that I do think that like overall many people like made updates in the right direction of like, it could happen like quickly. And that is kind of what we were trying to say. But I think some people focus specifically on like 2027 exactly, or like
Yeah.
annoyed if it like didn't, represent our like median viewpoint.
Hmm.
Um and then yeah, I think that I was actually disappointed especially conditional on the amount of like attention it got. I feel like there weren't there haven't been that many like high quality derivative outputs in my opinion, in the sense of like there were some people who submitted alternative scenarios, but like, you know, they weren't as exciting as we'd hoped. And like, yeah, I mean there's people who've like written like definitely there's some people who've written thoughtful stuff about it, but like overall I do think like I would like I would have liked there to be like more like in sort of like work that engaged with it and like added to the conversation like on top of it and stuff.
Yeah.
I do still think it had like a good effect. I think probably like a lot of the people who are now getting into like AI safety from AI 2027 have like, you know, more like more sort of like clear threat model or picture of like what's going on. Um than like if they have gotten in through some other path maybe. And so I do think it's like good to like have like an actual like concrete scenario like that to orient people. Um, but yeah, I was like somewhat disappointed in some aspects. There are some good criticisms like or like there are some yeah like I think like there are some issues with our timelines forecasts in particular that like were pointed out. And but yeah, I think that
Yeah, I think the tie total critique in particular is one that I read in preparation for this episode. I'm wondering uh yeah, is that mainly what you're thinking of, or do you think there are other quite good critiques?
um so there's someone else who basically like um before Ty Total who like pointed out or like kind of like pointed at things that led me to realize issues with the timelines model,
Yeah.
or like pointed out some things directly also. Um Named Peter Johnson. But he didn't write like a big post about it. But yeah. So that was useful. Yeah, I think Ty Total's I don't know if you read our like response to it, but
Yep, I
okay,
read
cool.
the critique and I also read
Okay.
your response.
Okay, cool. Well, maybe I can still just summarize it then. I mean, I think basically, I think Ty Total did make some good points that we adjusted the model based on.
Yeah.
Um, I think the like overall framing of the piece was like kind of wrong in my opinion, or like I think it was too like dismissive of the value of like this sort of work in general as a kind of like um as like kind of like I think there were like kind of separate arguments about like the value of like the shape of work that we were doing versus like the object level problems in the forecasts.
Yeah.
And I like agreed with like some but not all the object level problems.
Yeah.
And then I like disagreed with basically all of the arguments around like the value of this sort of exercise.
Hmm. Fair enough. Um Yeah. So speaking of updates you made, yeah, as we've been talking, you mentioned like a bunch of updates to the model, and I don't think we've talked that much about like what that caches out to. Like, yeah, can you say a little bit about like what kind of the current views are, based on these like timeline and takeoff models on like, is it still 2027? Is it some other year?
Yeah, so we also recently wrote a blog post about this, but yeah, basically, maybe I'll first talk about Daniel's views. I think one thing that we realized is that like, um, initially like, on the sort of like front page for our model, it had like the values with my parameters, um, because I was like the first author, but like journalists were saying that it was like Daniel's
Oh,
because like even though it like said like right next to the like graphs that it was mine, but
yeah,
but I think Daniel is just like more prominent, so it's good to like display his so it doesn't get confused.
fair enough.
But yeah, anyways, so starting with Daniel's, I think when AI 2027 came out, his median for AGI was 2028.
Hmm.
Now his median is more like 2030.
Hmm.
I'll also say, yeah, sorry, maybe also disclaimer before saying more things. Since we last did our like last like official update,
Yeah.
there's been like various things that have happened. For example, I think Opus 4.6 has come out, and like there's been like people like I think Anthropic like reported Claude Code's revenue growth that was very impressive, etc. So these are not like I think it's
Yeah.
plausible that our actual timelines are a bit shorter than I'll say, but I'll just say kind of like I think what are like basically roughly what our most recent sort of like actual distributions that we put together are.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I think Daniel had sort of like AGI in 2030, automated coder in 2029. So those were the median. So his AGI median maybe went back by 2 years then,
Okay.
from 2020 to 2030. But if you're still looking at the modal forecast, so like the modal year, it's still around 2028, 2029.
Okay.
And that's also the case for me. So like if you're looking at like the most likely year, it's not that different. But yeah, if you're looking at the median has shifted some, but not like vastly.
Okay.
And then yeah, and then for me like yeah, so originally I said my superhuman coder median was 2030 in the
Yep.
initial timelines forecast. And then with our initial release of the model, and I believe our first update, I said my median for automated coder, which is like a lower
Yep.
milestone, was like 2032. Though, yeah, I might move that up at least a little from the things I was just mentioning.
Okay.
And then, yeah, and then I had AGI at 2035,
Okay.
but maybe 2034 soon. So, yeah, so basically I moved my forecasts back by like 1 to 3 years or something like that. And then overall, and Daniel moved his back by like 2 years in terms of the medians.
Okay.
Roughly. So basically I would say like overall we're like our medians moving back some. We still have like significant probability. Like I think, Daniel has around like still has like 20% probability of HAI by the end of 2027. So
Okay.
so like it's not like we're like this is never gonna happen. It's just like we're assigning less probability mass to it.
And what's like the so if that's the median, like kind of the 50-50 over under of when we're gonna get super intelligence, like what's the like 25th percentile, the 75th percentile? Like is it like it's definitely between April and June 2032, or is it
Yeah. Super intelligence, by the way, is further out.
sorry.
But yeah, or like my median for super intelligence, I think is probably 2036.
Okay.
There's by the way, one thing people should keep in mind is that there's a weird yeah, one effect to keep in mind with these things is that like at least my AC median is maybe 2032, and my AGI median, we call it TED AI on our website, by the way,
Yep.
specific like operationalization of AGI, which is like top expert dominating AI, which means that it's like better than top human experts at basically all cognitive tasks.
Okay.
Um,
And what's the difference between that and super intelligence?
super intelligence is the same thing, except they need to be much better.
Okay.
In particular, I can say specific opposition if you want, but basically it's just that intuitively is that the gap between the superintelligence and the best human has to be 2 times bigger than the gap between the best human and the median human.
Okay, so basically, like, the reason those are different things is you're imagining like it's a while between like you're basically at the top expert everywhere and you're like way better than the top expert anywhere. It actually takes a while to get way better from parity.
Yeah, especially if you're not having like a crazy software intelligence explosion.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so yeah, anyways, and so and I guess what I was gonna say is that yeah, it's like there's an effect where like there's 3 years between AC and TED AI in my medians, but my median of like AC to TED AI is like 1.25 years or something.
Okay.
Because you're like adding to long tail distributions. So yeah, just keep that in mind when I say things like that. Like I don't my median is not like 3 years to get from AC to TED AI.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyways. Okay, but yeah, in terms of the uncertainty, so yeah, I mean, basically we have a bunch of uncertainty. I can try to like remember roughly mine. I think I would say that like, I have around, and also listeners should go to aifuturesmodel.com/forecast to see, Daniel and my latest forecast at any point. But I'll try to reconstruct. So I think I have roughly my 20th percentile for automated coder is roughly like end of 2027.
Yeah.
And then my 75th is probably like in the late 2030s, maybe 2040. So basically I have a lot of uncertainty. I mean, it's kind of for the reasons we were discussing earlier of like to the extent we're like trusting our model, right? It's just like changing the like super exponential parameter by a significant amount can just affect things a lot. And like another thing that like accentuates this is that you know, you need to like yeah, basically, like, this compute scaling is going to slow down a lot. I mentioned this a bit earlier, but basically, because of the effect that the compute scaling and the human labor scaling will slow down a lot in the 2030s and then further onward, if we don't have AGI, that makes it so your distribution is, like, longer tailed, you know? If it were the case that the, like, kind of, like, scale up would be the same, then, you know, I would have significantly earlier predictions, yeah.
Fair enough. Then I guess to ask about kind of the future of AI Futures Project. So I think earlier in this conversation you discussed a next scenario. Can you tell us a little bit about what that might be?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we're still deciding exactly what things we want to release and what to call it and stuff. So I'll probably not give like too much detail, but the overall idea is that we're trying to paint like a positive vision and of like what we think should happen. So AI 2027 is a predictive scenario. This is like at least partially a prescriptive scenario in the sense that we are like depicting the US government to act as we hope they would. It will probably also happen a bit later than 2027.
Sorry, the AI happens a bit later than 2027, or you released the scenario of it?
I mean, hopefully not the scenario.
Okay.
But we'll see. It does take a while. No, I meant like, yeah, AGI happens.
Got it.
In more like roughly 2030 by default, probably.
Okay.
Yeah, and so we're deciding the exact form factor for everything, but like one thing we'll probably have is a scenario that is like sort of like includes our recommendations for what we think international coordination should look like. So like, yeah, basically like, you know, it seems like a lot of people have talked about kind of like different treaties or like moratoriums. Some people have like drafted treaties, but we want to actually like, we think that like a scenario is a really useful tool for like forcing ourselves to actually think through like what would all the rules actually need to be, what would like different actors be trying to do, what are all the different considerations that we need to like weigh against each other to sort of like decide the best path and stuff. And so that's kind of what a lot of what we've been working on is thinking through all of that. Yeah.
And to think about the distinction there, so the good ending in AI 2027, it sounds like this is like mostly forecasting about like basically governmental decisions and to some degree wish casting about alignment. Whereas should I imagine that in the upcoming scenario it will be like kind of wish casting about government decisions, but like forecasting about technical alignment progress?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, but also like I think in the slowdown ending, like which is what you're referring to,
Yep.
the kind of like good ending in AI 2027. Yeah, which also has potential, like maybe doesn't depend. It maybe doesn't end great either. There might be a still large concentration of power, but
Yep.
at least the AIs are aligned in that ending.
Yeah, I mean,
Uh,
it's better than death for everyone, right?
Probably, yeah. um, yeah. What was I saying? Right. Okay. Yeah. So, but in that case, we like barely like got by basically.
Yeah.
But the new scenario, it'll be like, yeah, like more strongly wish casting maybe is one way to put it. Like
Yeah.
we're like this is what we actually think would need to happen to like really have a very high chance of making things go well, not just to like scrape by, you know.
Yep. Fair enough. Um, yeah. So I guess like, yeah. What else should people expect to come out of AI Futures projects? Like, what have you guys done since AI 2027 other than just like playing with the numbers?
Yeah, I mean I was working on the timelines and takeoff model for a while. um the main project currently is the upcoming scenario.
Hmm.
um and so we've been working a lot on that. It's gonna have probably like, again, no promises, but my guess is that it'll have a lot more supporting research and like text than AI 2027,
Nice.
but while still hopefully being like easily readable and like, you know, like you know, the main text will maybe still be like a similar ish length, but like there's a lot more like boxes and like the kind of expandable boxes and like supplements and materials and stuff. um and then yeah, I think that yeah, I mean that's basically the main thing we're working on, I'd say. I think yeah, are there other things? Yeah, I mean I'm not sure. I think I mean we have been blogging about various things as well, but I think our main projects have been, yeah, the scenario, air futures model, and then, you know, the new scenario. I think we're trying to sort of like, you know, lean into the strengths, I guess.
Fair
But
enough.
definitely open to doing like, you know, I think especially as we get into the like, you know, if we're getting close to the intelligence explosion, there's just like it's quite hard to predict what will be like the best thing to do, and we want to be like ready to pivot and do whatever that is.
Okay. Um. So if okay, I imagine that there are a bunch of listeners to this podcast who are sort of like early in their career of doing AI safety stuff. Um, what research do you think would be like most useful to help in the like in the endeavor of AI forecasting? Like what do you wish people were working on?
Yeah. Um. Well, yeah. I mean, I think especially if people are just getting started out, I usually recommend like basically writing something that is sort of like feeding off of someone else's work. So like
Hmm.
read something and then write up like a critique of it, or like explore like a point that you thought was like underdeveloped
Yep.
or stuff like that. And so like, yeah, I mean, we were hoping AI 27 would be a good jumping off point, but there's like various other stuff, you know, in this sort of genre, like situational awareness. Um, yeah, I don't know. The main paper is just one that comes to mind, but
Hmm.
this isn't a very like when I was,
The main paper being the mutually assured
yeah, AI malfunction or
AI
something.
malfunction. Yeah. Basically, like
Sorry, superintelligencestrategy.com or org
yeah.
or
It's
but yeah.
anyway. People can read that if they want to, but like fork off other people's things is your
Yeah, exactly. So when I was starting to do stuff, I was like, I found that useful at least. Like I wrote a review of like um What We Owe the Future, and I also wrote a review of like um Joe Carlsmith's report, Is Power Seeking an Existential Risk?
Hmm.
And then also like Tom Davidson's takeoff model. So like I found it yeah, and so yeah, I think that was what I found most sort of like useful and tractable, like just like reviewing other people's work. I think also just like, you know, kind of like following like a similar recipe to other people, maybe like, you know, writing a short version of AI, like your version of AI 2027. Um, yeah, I also usually recommend that if people are just getting into it, that they try to like read a bunch of stuff like this. Actually, there's a blog post also that I wrote about what you can do about AI 2027 that has various recommendations, and one of the things it has is like a reading list with some of my favorite things that I would recommend like reading and then like discussing with friends or something like that.
Mm.
But yeah, anything else? I mean, one thing is that so in terms of the timelines, in terms of like takeoff modeling, we're like potentially interested in people trying to measure research tastes. Basically, as I was talking about earlier, like we think that if there's a fast intelligence explosion, it'll probably basically come from research tastes. And the most important parameter that's kind of like informing that is how quickly AIs improve at research tastes as you make them more like generally capable. Um, and so, and that's something that basically essentially hasn't been studied at all, publicly at least. So,
Mm.
so that would be something that was useful. And I think probably AIs are like getting there, like if not are there, we'll soon be in a place where you can like actually do useful stuff there. Try to see like how good AIs are at like predicting the outcome of experiments or stuff like that. Or like brainstorming ideas. And then yeah. So anyways, I think that's something that, for example, would be technical work that would like feed into what we're doing. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, just like generally, like, yeah, I mean, also, for example, for the AI futures model, like, the timelines and takeoff model, I think that if people would just like pick the parameter where they think we estimated the most wrong, and like write up why, I think that would be something that I would wish more people would do. Oh yeah, and I was also going to say there's another kind of like example like derivative work that was useful at least to our timelines and takeoff forecasting was like epoch capabilities index,
Mm.
which is like a sort of like, benchmark that, or it's like an aggregate of benchmarks that sort of like kind of like tracks how AI capabilities change over time.
Yeah.
And that's very useful for like, it's kind of can be used as like potentially a substitute for effective compute in the sense that it's like a general like model of AI's capabilities.
Mm. Do you mean as a substitute for time horizon or?
No, I mean
Oh,
effective compute.
interesting.
Time horizon is like a yeah, or like I guess it could also be like, yeah, I mean you could just map time horizons onto epoch capabilities index if you wanted to.
Yep. And indeed they have.
Yeah.
Yeah. One reason I was reaching for time horizons is they're in some sense they're both measures of roughly how capable AIs are, right? In a way that's like not tied to one particular.
Yeah.
Well, I guess the time horizon is tied to the meter time horizon benchmark, but
Yeah.
conceptually.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense. I mean, I think that um like the nice thing about UCI is that we have just so much data. Like we have a lot of data
Yeah.
for it. And it aggregates like a lot of data points.
Yeah.
If we had time horizon data points across tons of different models and tests, then yeah, maybe it could do that also. But yeah, I guess I've also been maybe answering like maybe a bit heavily weighted to timelines and takeoff. I think that yeah, I don't know. I guess I'd also say like if you're super interested, feel free to just like our emails are on our website, but you can also just like Eli at ai-futures.org and say what you're like, say your ideas or something. Like generally quite excited to like if people are trying to like actively trying to like do stuff that will be like useful for our work, then happy to like give advice or something. I think it's a bit harder to say things for like the kind of like scenario work than for the like more concrete kind of like timelines and takeoff model, just because like a lot of it's kind of harder to make like partial progress on, I think. But I think yeah, maybe the closest would just be like yeah, picking an aspect of like the world or AI training examine scenario and like explaining why you think goes wrong and what you think should happen instead.
Yeah. So I guess finally I want to ask if people were interested in this discussion, they're fans of your work. How should they follow your future research?
Yeah, thanks. So we have a Substack that we put sort of like most of our sort of like work. It's a combination of just blog posts, but then also if we have like a larger project, we'll always like announce it there.
Yep.
It's like at blog.ai-futures.org.
Yep.
And then we also have like a research notes Substack that has like a lower bar for posting things. Yeah, ideally we're sort of like, so if you're interested in seeing stuff that might be more like niche or unpolished, that could be good. And then, as I mentioned earlier, but the AIfuturesModel.com has our timelines and takeoff forecast, and that will be like updated.
Mm.
Sort of like the forecasts will be updated as we continue to change our minds. And then also you can follow on Twitter kind of like I'm at Eli_Lifland. Daniel, I forgot exactly his handle, but it can be in the description.
It'll be in the description.
Yeah. And then also like just the AI Futures Twitter. Yeah.
Great. Well, yeah, links to all those things will be in the description. Eli, thanks very much for chatting with me today.
Yep. Thanks for having me.
This episode is edited by Kate Bernotz, and Amber Dornes helped with transcription. The opening and closing themes are by Jack Garrett. This episode was recorded at Far Labs. Financial support for the episode was provided by Coefficient Giving, along with patrons such as Lexi Malafeyev and David Byrne. To read a transcript, you can visit AXRP.net. You can also become a patron at patreon.com/AXRpodcast, or give a one-off donation at ko-fi.com/AXRpodcast. That's ko-fi.com/AXRpodcast. Finally, you can leave your thoughts on this episode at axrp.fyi.